limit. When your 2 minutes is up, the buzzer will go off. If you could just wrap up quickly from there. However, members may wish to ask you a question or ask you questions. So if you can stay around, what we're going to do, because there's only one bill, and normally we wait for the questions until the very end of the testimony, we're going to take the testifiers in groups of about 10, and at the end of that 10, we'll break for questions for those 10 people, so that if people need to leave, they can leave and not miss out on being questioned. I don't know. That may be that may not be that may be an oxymoron. In any case, let's go ahead and get started.
Chair, sorry. I forgot to bring the timer. Oh, you got one. Thank you.
First up is the United States Department of Justice in opposition. Next is the Attorney General or his designee. Afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Lance Go to Deputy Attorney General for the state. The department strongly opposes this bill. The purpose of this bill is to legalize marijuana for persons 21 years of age and older, and also legalize the cultivation and processing of marijuana, manufacturing of marijuana products, the testing of marijuana, and the retail sale of marijuana and marijuana products. It promotes the recreational use of marijuana and the development of a commercial marijuana industry. It has nothing to do with the limited use of marijuana for medical purposes. So we do strongly oppose this for several reasons. First, of course, is that it is still a Schedule I controlled substance under federal law, and therefore illegal under federal law to grow, distribute, or use marijuana. And I think federal authorities have made it clear that they will continue to enforce the laws and prosecute those, especially those who are producing and distributing marijuana. Second reason is that it is proposing to legalize what we've always recognized in our laws as very serious criminal conduct. It would legalize conduct currently prohibited as commercial promotion of marijuana in the first degree, a Class A felony, commercial promotion of marijuana in the second degree, a Class B felony, promoting detrimental drugs in the first degree, a Class C felony, amongst others. It will allow any adult 21 and older who can obtain a license to establish a money-making enterprise involving the cultivation, processing, distribution, and sale of marijuana, as well as the manufacture and distribution of marijuana products. There are no restrictions in this bill or limitations on the amount of marijuana that a licensed adult could process, grow, produce, distribute. This bill will also allow any adult without a license to possess up to 5 marijuana plants or the marijuana produced by those plants.
Okay, I'm sorry, can you start wrapping up, please?
Yes. We're concerned that if this law is passed, marijuana could become very prevalent in Hawaii and would be readily available to all persons, including our youth. In my testimony, I do refer to some of the what has happened in other jurisdictions that have allowed marijuana dispensaries. There has been, marijuana is a very serious drug. It has very bad consequences for people. In 2002, the estimated number of...
If I let you go on a long time, I'm going to have to let everybody go on a long time. So we do have your written testimony, and I hope you can stay around for questions, because I'm pretty sure people will have. Okay?
Okay,
thank you very much. Next up is the Department of Public Safety. Afternoon.
Afternoon, Chair Rhodes, Vice Chair Har, members of the committee. Keith Kamita for Department of Public Safety. The department strongly opposes this bill also for many of the reasons the Attorney General gave. One of the things we wanted to key on is that, like the Attorney General said, this is against state and federal law as it is now. But federal law per se, even if Hawaii were to pass this bill, the federal law would still come into effect. One of the problems, and one of the big problems, is this bill authorizes the possession and drawing of up to 5 marijuana plants and does not limit any amount of marijuana that they can produce. We've seen some plants that produce very small amounts, but we've also seen plants by itself that can put out 2 pounds. So we're talking about a huge amount of marijuana in one location and many locations. They say that you can walk around with 1 ounce of marijuana at any one time. This is about an ounce of marijuana. So you could constantly have this on your person at any time under this law. The main thing is we're sending a wrong message here. With our kids, we've known that through the studies that marijuana does impact our youth. And even though this says that you got to be 21 and older, you're making the drug more available, where the kids can get at it. We already have this problem with med marijuana, where kids are already going into stashes of mom and dads. I'll be here for questions if you have any.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have the Department of Taxation with comments. Next, we have the Prosecuting Attorney, Sitting County of Honolulu, in opposition. Next, we have the Kauai Police Department, also in opposition. Next, we have the Honolulu Police Department. Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. I'm Captain Jerry Norrie from the Honolulu Police Department. The Honolulu Police Department strongly opposes House Bill 699 relating to marijuana. Marijuana can lead to significant health, safety, social and learning, or behavioral problems. It also has a high potential for abuse and can result in addiction. And according to the ONDCP, Office of National Drug Control Policy from the White House, in 2007, combined state and federal taxes collected on alcohol were less than 10% of the estimated $185 billion in alcohol-related costs to healthcare, criminal justice, and lost productivity in the workplace. So we don't think that legalizing marijuana is going to realize the tax savings and benefits that some people are proposing. So the Honolulu Police Department respectfully opposes Bill 699 relating to marijuana.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up is the Hawaii County Police Department. Oh, no, he's here. He's here. Sorry. Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair. I'm Paul Ferrum, the Deputy Police Chief for the Hawaii Police Department. Chief Harry Kubajiri has sent in written testimony strongly opposing this measure. As written, this bill is overly broad and lacks necessary quality controls and measures and misplaces the responsibility of the program's oversight. The bill is also flawed in its perception that at the beginning, whereby it describes how law enforcement resources should be redirected to more serious threats to the public safety. According to our department's statistics, 90 to 95% of our department's marijuana arrests were made incidental to or resulted from other criminal investigations where marijuana was not the focus of the officers involved. The statistics clearly show that law enforcement resources are not unnecessarily expended on personal use of marijuana, and law enforcement generally becomes involved in marijuana investigations only after being summoned for other reasons. There's already a medical marijuana program in place for individuals who have been determined to need medical marijuana in order to control their pain or their illness. We're concerned that the message that this bill is sending out to society that it allows for the blatant use, possession, consumption, and distribution of marijuana, and therefore the Hawaii County Police Department strongly opposes this bill.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming up. Next up, we have the Maui Police Department. Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Thanks for making the trip.
My name is Lieutenant Gerald Fladera from the Maui Police Department. I'm currently with the Quality Assurance Section. I'm here on behalf of the Maui Police Department and also Chief Gary Yabuta, who could not be here today. At this point in time, we basically oppose this bill in its entirety. And we would like to stand by our current statement that we have submitted today. And we'll be available for any questions if you have any.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Jordan Lowe, retired U.S. U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. Afternoon.
Good afternoon. I am opposed to House Bill 699 because it does violate federal laws relating to the sale, possession, cultivation, and distribution of a Schedule I controlled substance. And it also has further implications contrary to the provisions set forth by the Federal Gun Control Act of 1968 as amended. Specifically, in the Gun Control Act, it's a violation for any user of any controlled substance to be in possession, receive, or possess any firearm or ammunition, regardless of whether the use of marijuana is sanctioned by state laws in any provision. Also, even if the firearm is legally registered to that individual with the local police departments, it still becomes a violation of federal law if they become a user of any controlled substance. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. By my count, that's 10 testifiers, so we're going to break here for questions. Members, any questions of the witnesses that have testified so far? Go ahead, Vice Chair Hart.
I'm sorry, Chair. I didn't know we were going to do it this
Oh, no, just because it's only one bill, and if we wait until everybody has testified before we start asking questions, then people are going to have to wait a long time.
Okay.
So I just want to give people the opportunity to leave if they need to.
Mr. Lowe, can I have you come back up, please? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for being here. Mr. Lowe, you have here in your written testimony that you are in fact a retired agent in charge with the U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosive, ATF.
Correct.
Correct? Okay. So you say here that you retired after 34 years of federal service as a resident agent in charge of the Honolulu Field Office of U.S. Bureau of ATF. And you basically talk about, and in your written and verbal testimony, you talked about the fact that even if we were to pass this measure, it would still be in violation of federal law.
Correct.
Correct. So let's just go through this right now. Explain for those of us who don't have a background in this area. Let's just say, hypothetically speaking, this bill were to go forward, and let's say it became the law of the land in the state of Hawaii. So now we have these dispensaries. People are allowed to carry. And I'm sorry, Mr. Kamita, can you bring me up that I'd like to see how much 1 ounce is again. Thank you. So essentially we're talking about people now, after this bill were to pass, that people would be allowed to have, and again, Henry, this is, I'm like this. Anyways, for exhibition purposes, oh God, it stinks. So anyways, so if this bill were to pass, people would be allowed to carry this much legally on their persons. There would be dispensaries, etc. Now, what would the feds do? Again, right now we know that we had 2 states that have, in fact, passed these types of laws. And so, theoretically, though, what could the feds do if we were to have these dispensaries operating under state law?
Well, hypothetically, the various law enforcement agencies, in conjunction with the United States Attorney's Office, could investigate that individual and the dispensaries for possession and distribution. Following up on the investigation, that can lead to the execution of federal search warrants, which will result in seizures of the product, any firearms, proceeds, property, the building that the dispensary is located at.
So in other words, you're saying the feds could come in and raid a state-sanctioned dispensary?
I prefer to use the word execution of a search warrant, not necessarily raid.
Okay,
Yes.
excuse me. So you could execute a search warrant and essentially shut down such a state-sanctioned operation?
Yes.
And you would confiscate everything in that's being promoted in that particular dispensary?
Everything that is of evidentiary value, yes.
Okay. What is, I mean, to the best of your knowledge, I know that in the state of Hawaii we are kind of looking at, and what are the 2 states that have legalized it? Oh, it's great that you guys know this. Colorado and Washington. So what are we waiting for the feds to do right now? I mean, what's happening at that level with Colorado and Washington?
Senate hearings on legalizing.
Excuse me?
Senate hearings on legalizing.
Okay, so isn't this somewhat premature then for the state at this point then? I mean, really, at the end of the day, isn't I've heard this already. Isn't marijuana still a Class 1 controlled substance?
A Schedule 1 controlled
A
substance, yes.
Schedule 1 controlled substance under federal law, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it's the federal law that controls over state law, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so even if we were to pass this law, it would still be against federal law.
Correct.
So even though 2 other states have already passed this law, it still violates federal law, and anyone who were to participate in the use of recreational marijuana would still be in violation of federal law.
Correct.
Okay. So, excuse me, sir, where you're not being asked, we'll ask you to come up and testify when the time is right. Thank you. So anyways, I just want to make sure then that even if we were to pass this bill, even if we were to amend it, do whatever to it, it would still move forward. It would still be in violation of federal law.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Representative Thielen.
Thank you.
Yeah, please take it.
Thank you. And Jordan, can you stay there, please? Thank you.
Sure.
You're with we're with the U.S. Bureau of Alcohol. I'm asking you to go back to a time that was probably before you were born, but the time during the era of Prohibition.
Correct.
When Prohibition was overturned, when it became, I think it was done probably state by state by state, fighting back against what the people of that state felt was an unwise federal prohibition. When Prohibition was overturned, the next day you could have gone in and bought a drink legally, right?
Again, I wasn't born at that time, so I would assume so.
Okay. And that came about because the people fought back against what they felt was unwise and virtually wrong federal mandate. So as we sit here today, we have 2 states where the population has spoken, and one is Colorado. And as I understand it, I believe, and I'll ask someone else in the room that may know better than I do, I believe that they have put that in their constitution, their state constitution. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. So that is a very clear statement by the people. That means a new legislature couldn't come in and just pass a different law and repeal it. It's in their constitution. And then the state of Washington has moved ahead. I don't believe that we are the only one considering this, the only state in the nation. But at the end of the day, if states' rights and state action prevails and the cannabis is reclassified and is not a Schedule 1 drug, then people of age 21 or older would be allowed to go to a dispensary and purchase a small amount of cannabis for their personal use without intervention by the federal government. Am I correct?
No, you're not.
All right, explain.
Because the dispensary itself would be considered engaging in the business of distributing controlled substance.
No, you missed what I was saying then. You weren't following.
If you're talking about the individuals themselves.
No, I'm talking about the change in the law, federally, in the federal law, just like they did with Prohibition.
Well, the issue is that the federal law has not changed.
I know that. I'm saying follow my rationale, though.
Oh, no, I understand.
As the states move and move ahead, once that occurs and it reaches that point where the states do prevail in what they are trying to do, and it is no longer a Schedule 1 drug, then people would be free to go into the state-operated, people of age 21 and older, be free to go into the dispensaries, pay a heavy tax, which is a good idea, and purchase.
So, and your question is, because right now...
I'm not saying right now. I'm saying follow what my train of thought.
I follow your train of thought.
Thank you.
But
Okay,
at
thank
issue
you.
right now...
Not right now, it's different.
Well,
You've already testified to that.
Can
Thank
I
you.
answer?
Okay, I'm sorry. Is there a question still on the
No,
table?
that was just asking him to follow my train of thought, and that was difficult for him to do, and I can understand why. Thank you.
Okay. Members, any other questions?
I'm sorry, Chair, I have another question.
Okay,
And Mr. Lowe, you
Representative
can
Farr.
stay here. Can I have any of the law enforcement gentlemen, and thank you for coming up from the neighbor islands as well. So Keith, Maui Police HPD, Hawaii HPD, HPD. Okay, there's been some notion about, there's been some discussion about a firearm, if a firearm is registered in the state of Hawaii, it would still be a violation. I don't have a background, I don't understand any of this. Can somebody please explain this to me? Why are we talking about firearms when we're talking about cannabis? What does this have to do with one or the other?
Well, because there's no concurrent state law prohibiting users of controlled substances to possess firearms or ammunition. That is only a federal law.
Keith, I'm sorry, I'm not clear.
It's against the law for anyone. It's against federal law for anyone who owns a firearm, even if it's legally registered in the state of Hawaii, to be in possession of any Schedule I controlled substance, including marijuana, even if that marijuana, for example, is covered by the medical marijuana law. So anybody who owns a firearm or is in possession of a firearm cannot also be in possession of marijuana.
And this is under state and federal law. State law on firearms refer back to the federal statute.
Okay, so I'm just still trying to wrap my brain around the gun versus the cannabis issue. Here we have a bill that is just attempting to tax marijuana, to decriminalize it, make it legal, allow people over the age of 21 to carry 1 ounce up to their 1 ounce on their persons, and to open these dispensaries for people to obtain it legally, and we tax the hell out of it. But with respect to guns, is there some correlation? Why are we having this issue with guns being now brought into the discussion with your testimony?
Well, because with House Bill 699, you're allowing people basically under state law to use marijuana.
Okay.
Under federal law, you become a user of controlled substance.
Okay.
If you are a user of controlled substance, you no longer can possess firearms or ammunition under federal law. It's a violation. So
Okay.
even if you are complying with state law and you have the firearm legally registered to you that you have purchased, and you start using controlled substance, you no longer, you're in violation of federal law to possess that firearm or to possess that ammunition.
Okay. So again, is there a correlation, because some people in the audience are seeming to take issue with the whole talk of firearms. In their minds, it's not even germane at this point. It's not even relevant. But I guess, is there some correlation? Are there statistics showing that users of marijuana in fact possess firearms to make this an issue?
Well, in my career, and I can't give you specifics because I'm not allowed to. We have arrested individuals or have conducted search warrants on individuals' residence where we found marijuana, drug paraphernalia, and firearms together.
Okay. So when you've executed a search warrant, in essence, you've seized whatever items were there in the commission of that crime, including firearms.
Correct.
Okay. Keith?
My narcotic enforcement division also runs the marijuana eradication on the Big Island, and yes, they have found weapons and marijuana together at that scene.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, members, any other questions? Seeing none, could I have Deputy Attorney General Goto back up, if you're still here? Oh, there you are. So, thank you. With the passage of these new laws in Colorado and Washington, are you aware of any guidance that the federal government has given in terms of how they plan to deal with that? I mean, I think President Obama is on record as saying we got bigger fish to fry, but that's not really a policy statement. That's sort of and I just wondered if you'd gotten anything formal from the Department of Justice about how they plan to deal with the conflict between Washington and Colorado state law and the federal law.
Yeah. Just 1 second.
Or if you've already submitted it and I just missed it in the hundreds of pages of testimony, I apologize.
No, I have some documentation from the President's Office of National Drug Control Policy, and there was a clear statements issued, let's see, October 19, 2009, there was a memorandum to selected United States attorneys regarding investigations and prosecutions in states authorizing the medical use of marijuana. And there was another memorandum issued June 29, 2011, again to United States attorneys, guidance regarding the Ogden memo in jurisdictions seeking to authorize marijuana for medical use. Basically, these two memorandums, they're stating that the prosecution of significant traffickers in illegal drugs, including marijuana, remains a core priority of the department, and that current policy was never intended to shield such activities from federal enforcement action and prosecution, even where those activities purport to comply with state law.
I'm sorry, what was the date of this document?
This is a kind of like a synopsis of a statement of two memorandum. That one was issued in 2009 and another in 2011.
Okay.
And it ended persons who are in the business of cultivating, selling, or distributing marijuana, and those who knowingly facilitate such activities are in violation of the Controlled Substances Act, regardless of state law. And I have another statement. I can provide this to you from the director.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. That'd be great. I said that'd be great. I'd like to see it. I'm sorry.
This one.
I don't know what I mumble sometimes. I apologize.
I'm sorry. This one is from the director, R. Gil Kurlikowski, the director of ONDCP. And this is included in his remarks delivered to the California Police Chiefs Association Conference, March 4, 2010. Let's see. He talked about, well, he expressed a lot of concerns. In summary, I just want to read the summary. There's a lot he said, but in summary he says, now that I've told you what the research says, let me tell you what this means in practical terms. Legalization means the prices come down, the number of users goes up, the underground market adapts, and the revenue gained through the regulated market will never keep pace with the financial and social costs of making this drug more accessible. That was his summary of everything he said.
Could we get a copy of that?
Yes.
Great. But there hasn't. But since the election, since November of 2012, no new guidance has come down that you're aware of.
No.
Okay. All right.
I don't think there's been any change.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, Lance, can you say that one second?
Hang on. Let me just finish up, and I'll come back to you. Could I have the County of Hawaii, I think, was the person, the testifier who brought this up? I think you said the bill doesn't put the administration of the, I forget exactly how you phrased it, but it doesn't put the administration of the new program or the legalization in the right hands. Is that, could you, where do you think it should be, or what's the issue there?
Under the current proposal, according to the proposal, the Department of Taxation would be responsible for developing rules and procedures governing the licensing of proposed marijuana facilities, health and safety requirements, standards to manufacture marijuana products, and cultivation of marijuana. I don't believe that the Department of Taxation is equipped or with the expertise or knowledge to do this.
All right, great. Thank you very much. And I think Representative Barr had did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I concurred with the police's position on that. And in the last page of my testimony, on page 4, I point that out. I just note that I referred to I thought it was a Department of Public Safety. It was an error. It is a Department of Taxation. The error is because under 329, the department, by definition, is a Department of Public Safety. But, I don't know, in this new part of 329, they're redefining the department for that particular
Just for that
part.
section. Okay.
That's taxation.
Okay.
So I just got a little confused there.
Okay, no problem. Representative Howard, you got another question?
Thank you, Chair. Lance?
Yeah.
In your testimony, your written testimony, you talked about medical marijuana dispensaries, what was happening in other counties on
Right.
page 3. Can you kind of go through what those negative impacts, social ills have been?
Well, it's clearly from history, what's been happening, there's been an increased crime and a significant decrease in the quality of life in the areas surrounding dispensaries. Amsterdam was touted by the marijuana lobby as a utopia, but in 2009, because of all the increased organized crime and other social factors, the government stepped in and started closing these coffee shops where marijuana were sold. In California, which relaxed its marijuana laws, by 2008, by community vote, changes were being made because of the increase in organized crime and other crime. And when the marijuana dispensaries started to proliferate, the police were all reporting increases in crime. More murders, robberies, burglaries, assaults, thefts. This is a quotation from a 2009 white paper on marijuana dispensaries by the California Police Chiefs Association's Task Force on Marijuana Dispensaries. And they wrote, in conclusion, storefront marijuana businesses are prey for criminals and create easily identifiable victims. The people growing marijuana are employing illegal means to protect their valuable cash crops. Many distributing marijuana are hardened criminals. Several are members of criminal street gangs or recognized organized crime syndicates, while others distributing marijuana to the businesses are perfect targets for thieves and robbers. They are being assaulted, robbed, and murdered. Those buying and using medical marijuana are also being victimized.
Okay, so Lance, I'm
yes.
sorry. So really, part of the contention of the AG's testimony in opposition is the social ills that would come from legalization, and based on what has happened in other jurisdictions with the proliferation of these types of medical marijuana dispensaries.
Absolutely, and there is well-documented proof also that marijuana results in serious health issues. In 2008, there were an estimated almost 4,000 marijuana-related visits.
400,000.
Is that what
it's 4,000.
400,000 marijuana-related visits to emergency rooms.
Okay, but you have here in your testimony, your written testimony, that according to the United States Department of Health and Human Services, in 2002, they estimated the number of marijuana-related visits to emergency rooms in the U.S. was about 130,000 people.
Correct.
So the U.S. federal government, the Health and Human Services Department, is in fact tracking this kind of information.
Absolutely.
So there is evidence out there that shows that having the marijuana be so accessible could have clearly detrimental impacts and social ills that would follow.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Lance, before you go, sorry. These questions trigger more questions. Do you have any statistics on how many hospitalizations there have been for alcohol abuse or for cigarette smoking? I don't think the Department of Health is here today. I'd ask them, but
No, I don't have anything like that.
okay. Maybe, Mr. Committee, do you happen to have anything like that?
Not with me, I cannot tell.
Okay, yeah, we can ask him too. I did have a question. I think probably I don't know who's best to answer, but do we have any idea how many people in Hawaii, how many people regularly use pakalolo today while it's not legal? You'll get your chance to testify, but I'm asking these guys. Yeah.
Just a second, let me see. Keith, do you have anything like that?
Not legal on the medical marijuana side, I got 11,000, but we were small, 1,000.
12,000 on the medical side. Okay.
I have some statistics from I think this is ONDCP about they prepared a report on Hawaii drug control.
On Hawaii, specific to Hawaii.
Specific to Hawaii.
Okay.
and they are saying that Hawaii is among the top 10 states for rates of current use of any illicit drug among those age 12 and older.
But it's not broken out by type of drug.
Well, let's see. They have a breakout for substance abuse treatment admissions. Substance abuse primary treatment admissions in Hawaii in 2010. And the data shows that marijuana is the most commonly cited drug among primary drug treatment admissions in Hawaii.
Okay.
Let's see. In 2010, marijuana far exceeded all the other types of drugs. The numbers was about 1,900 admission episodes.
Okay.
The next highest was stimulants, which was about 1,700, and then everything dropped off to, well, about 200 or less.
Okay. If you could pass it, you don't have to sit and give it. If you can email it to us or whatever, we'd love to see the statistics. Great, thank you. Okay, members, any other questions for this batch of witnesses? Representative Stevens.
Yes, I was noting in the testimony, I was skipping ahead. There's evidently David Nixon, an independent University of Hawaii economist, was commissioned to update a 2005 study on the state of marijuana law enforcement in Hawaii. He was asked to examine costs of current law enforcement policies and to predict the economic impact if Hawaii were to decriminalize, legalize, tax, and regulate marijuana. Nixon concluded by decriminalizing marijuana, Hawaii could redirect over $9 million annually in law enforcement costs, that it could conservatively add an additional $11 million in yearly revenues, and then the key sentences, regulating and taxing marijuana similarly to alcohol takes marijuana sales out of the hands of criminals and puts them behind the counters of legitimate and regulated businesses. This will not only, he concluded, this will not only generate revenue, but it will also make it more difficult for teenagers to access and consume marijuana. I wasn't sure if you had had a chance to see economist David Nixon's report.
No, I haven't.
If you haven't, I would ask if you would, and I'd be interested to discuss that with you afterward.
May I comment on that? I've read that report. But all the
Hang on just a second.
No, I'm speaking here directly.
Okay.
I would like to ask if you
Someone else
would
can.
do that,
Okay,
please,
please, wait.
because the key things that say to me, the economist has said, regulate and tax marijuana. You take the cannabis out of the hands of criminals, you put them behind local businesses, legitimate and regulated businesses, and by doing that, you're also going to make that more difficult for teenagers to access and consume marijuana. I think the interconnection sentence would be that the illegal drug dealers really won't be operating here because you're going to have legitimate and regulated businesses that will have the age limit of going in and being able to buy the cannabis. But I would like to ask, would you mind getting a hold of his report and then
I'll follow up with you afterwards.
I'd like that very much.
I'll do that.
Thank you so much.
If you're going to make marijuana more prevalent and easily to obtain, it's
I'm
going to
sorry.
be much more accessible
If
to
you
our
could-
youth, to our children. And you know, on this issue you've raised, the director of DCP spoke directly about it, comparing legalization of marijuana to alcohol. What's happened with alcohol? And what he said was that tax revenue collected from alcohol pales in comparison to the costs associated with it. Federal excise taxes collected on alcohol in 2007 totaled around $9 billion. States collected around $5.5 billion. Taken together, this is less than 10% of the over $185 billion in alcohol-related costs from health care, lost productivity, and criminal justice.
Well, then that would take us to another study that we don't have, whether or not alcohol is more unhealthy than cannabis, and we don't have that study before us, and I wouldn't like to rely upon an ONDCP kind of idea. The thing that I think is so positive for this bill, and that's why I'm asking if you'll look at this study.
Okay, I'm sorry, is there a question?
I can try to make it into one.
Please.
Thank you, Chair. What is so positive, we're taking, I think the substance is back there, but we're taking this substance and the criminal element that has been dealing with it up till now, we're putting that substance into your local business community where we're going to regulate it and tax it. And they're going to be responsible with stringent requirements to not sell to minors, similar to alcohol. And so I think it's going to make it more difficult for the teenagers to access it. And that's why I'm looking forward to your response after you read his report. And if you do have a response, don't give a statement about ONDCP giving a speech somewhere, because that's not really relevant. Thank you.
Let's go ahead and move on. Let me ask one final question about ONDPC, or I'm sorry, I don't have the Office of National Drug Control Policy. Yeah. Are they suggesting that we go back to prohibition for alcohol? Is that the conclusion of the...
No.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next batch of witnesses. Thank you all for coming back up and asking our questions. I have Keith Kamita on the next on the list, but you've already testified. Okay. Also, I saw Deputy Prosecutor Karamatsu. We did call your name already, but if you'd like to testify, come on up. Afternoon.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Judge Karamatsu, Deputy Prosecuting Attorney on behalf of the City County of Honolulu. We're in opposition to this bill, and I think a lot of the discussion that the Attorney General's office as well as HPD stated, we're in line with and echoing it. They mentioned some statistics on marijuana usage in Hawaii and the ties or the correlation with some of the problems that we see with adults as well as our young ones out there. The other thing that we note is that there's a higher ratio of I can't pronounce this word, the tetra. How do you say that? THC. Yeah, THC. Okay. THC. For that to be higher now than it was a decade ago or 20 years ago, maybe Keith Kamita can kind of explain some of those statistics. But these concentrations are higher, so you'll likely see different type of effects. The challenges that the state will have if it passes this will be regulation, and also some of the effects of individuals who use it, and it affects their health as well as their reactions towards other individuals, either through side effects of the drug or enhancements because of the drug. So these are things that we're worried about and concerned about. Strong recommendation is to keep marijuana as a illegal and controlled substance. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned this in the beginning hearing too, but we're not planning, we will not be voting on this measure today. On Fridays we never vote, or the general rule is not to vote after 2:45, so the Neighbor Island people can go home. But we will be doing decision making on Thursday the 7th at 2 p.m. in this room here. Thursday the 7th in this room at 2. Okay. Moving on. ACLU is next. And in support. Next up is Oh, you are here. I'm sorry. Come on up. Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair Rhodes, Vice Chair Haar, and members of the committee. The ACLU strongly supports this measure. In Hawaii, we believe that our laws should be practical and they should be fair. But today, we're wasting millions of dollars by having our criminal justice system treat marijuana users like violent criminals. and the war on drugs has trampled civil rights in a way that nothing else has done. It is unconscionable for our state to spend millions of tax dollars to arrest, prosecute, and crowd the courts and jail people for possession of small amount of marijuana. Our schools are falling down, our children don't have books, peer pupil spending is down, college tuition is up, social services have been cut left and right, and yet we continue to throw good money after bad and fill our prisons with nonviolent drug offenders. Not only are the laws wasteful, but they are also tremendously unfair. They allow the government to confiscate homes, to deny college loans, housing assistance, and veterans benefits. And selective enforcement targets our youth and our poor communities of color. We need the criminal justice system to use our scarce resources to protect us better from serious and violent crime and actually prevent drug abuse. In 1971, President Nixon declared the war on drugs, a war that has cost roughly $1 trillion, has produced little to no effect on the supply of or the demand for drugs in the U.S., created an epidemic of mass incarceration in the U.S., and created a highly profitable black market for drugs that's increased violence in our communities. The U.S. is now the world's largest jailer. 1 out of 99 American adults are in jail or prison. That's roughly 2.3 million Americans. The U.S. has only 5% of the world's population, and yet 25% of the world's prison population. That's more than the whole of Europe and more than China, which has over 1 billion people. If we took out drug crimes, that disparity would cease to exist. Of all those incarcerated, 25% are there for drug offenses, and most of these people don't need to be in prison. 60% of the people in prison for drug offenses have no history of violence. In 1971, fewer than 500,000 people were arrested for nonviolent drug offenses, and now we arrest approximately 1.7 million people annually for nonviolent drug offenses. In 1971, Congress spent $100 million to fight the drug war. Since then, we've spent over $1 trillion, and Hawaii alone spends approximately $12 million every year on marijuana law enforcement costs. Criminal justice harms for marijuana crimes are more dangerous than marijuana itself. Imprisoning people for drug offenses basically destroys their lives.
Please find a place to stop.
Sure. We need to use our dollars from sending fewer people to prison and invest in savings in programs that will reduce crime and drug abuse. Consider what we've done with tobacco, honest education, and earmarking money to prevention and cessation programs. Change will only come from the state level, and it's time for this war on families and communities to end. And so we support Bill HB699.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Coalition for a Drug-Free Hawaii. Afternoon.
Afternoon, Chair Rhodes, Vice Chair Har, and members of the committee. My name is Alan Shin. I'm the Executive Director at Coalition for Drug-Free Hawaii, and I don't want to repeat. I think most of the arguments have been made, and I just wanted to highlight some of them. And I think we are a prevention, and we do treatment services also. And in our experience, we have seen behavioral, psychological problems that come out of chronic use of marijuana, and especially of high-potency marijuana. So we see depression, mood swings, paranoia, and overall lower functioning of most of the youth, mainly counsel youth and young adults who are chronically using marijuana. So in our eyes, it's not a harmless substance for many chronic users and many adolescents who are still maturing mentally, emotionally, and physically. I think, again, ADAD statistics, treatment statistics, I just want to quote that, 60% of the youth that are treated now in Hawaii come in because of marijuana, problems with chronic marijuana use and abuse. And in the adult system, it's almost 17%. So I think that I think it does show that this is like other drugs, causes problems, and that we need to treat it. The other thing about legalization is that it further erodes our efforts as prevention providers to increase the perception of harm and decrease access. I think the bill's introduction comes at a time when we've had so many cuts in social service, especially among youth providing services, that we're leaving more unsupervised time for our youth, more opportunities for them to get into trouble, especially with drugs and other related issues. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next up is Progressive Democrats of Hawaii. Mr. Dame.
Aloha. My name is Bart Dame, and I'm testifying on behalf of Progressive Democrats of Hawaii. As I was coming here, I was reflecting on the number of people I know who do smoke marijuana and manage to live productive lives. I also reflect on the fact that over the last 2 years, at least 2 of my friends have had family members who have been arrested for possession of marijuana, and that complicated their lives tremendously, led to legal expenses. They were fortunately able to get off, but they had to throw a lot of resources and disrupted their lives. And that partly motivates me coming here today. We have an opportunity to adopt a sensible policy towards marijuana. We have been engaged in a war on drugs, as you've heard, and I think while that term sometimes is hyperbolic, in some ways it is appropriate. There's been a distortion of our rational thinking about this thing. Just as during a war, it is sometimes viewed as disloyal to sort of say maybe this war is not worth it, maybe the costs and everything are too much. Maybe we should turn around and we should pull out. Maybe I'm giving away my age a little bit. During the 1960s, Pete Seeger wrote a song called Waist Deep in the Big Muddy. And it was, on the surface, it was about a training exercise in I think the bayous of Louisiana, where an Army group had gone in and they had pushed on deeper and deeper until members of the group actually drowned. But it was an allegory about the war in Vietnam. And at that time, there were people who had too much vested in the war effort to think rationally as to whether that war made sense. And after the deaths of 55,000 Americans and hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of Southeast Asians, we finally corrected course and we pulled out. I think the war on drugs is a similar kind of thing, and it distorts our thinking in the same kinds of way. Frankly, the presentations from the law enforcement people, I was taught early on in my life, never accept no from someone who doesn't have the power to tell you yes. I don't think that law enforcement officers could come here and tell us the truth about marijuana and its effect. I think that the kinds of statistics they were presenting here would not be acceptable in the university environment, in the scientific community, or in the business community. The linkage that they draw between things and they imply causation, where the link is extremely tenuous, was shoddy science. And I think it's driven by ideology, and I think they have too much invested in this war on science. War on drugs. I would support Rep. Thielen's, and war on science, I would support Rep. Thielen's notion, yes, that we should, if the state of Hawaii could actually get on the side with the people of Colorado and the people of Washington State and stand up to the federal government and force us to get out of this track that we're on and not towards a more sensible track towards marijuana use, I think it would be good for the people of Hawaii. I think it would lead to harm reduction, and I think that should be our goal.
Okay, thanks very much. Next up, we have the Hawaii Regional Council of Carpenters. In opposition. Next, we have Community Alliance on Prisons. Afternoon, Ms. Brady.
Good afternoon, Chair Rhodes, Vice Chair Har, Member Representative Thielen, and Representative McDermott, and Representative Brower. I'm Kat Brady, testifying on behalf of Community Alliance on Prisons, always mindful that we have 5,800 citizens who are incarcerated in Hawaii and more than 1,500 serving their sentences abroad, thousands of miles from home, their loved ones, and in most cases from their ancestral lands. We support this measure as a common sense measure. We know prohibition has not worked, and we know that our prisons are bursting with nonviolent drug offenders. This is happening across the nation. The federal government has 50% of their people in the Bureau of Prisons, federal prisons, are nonviolent drug offenders, and a huge number, probably very close to that in our prisons, or even higher, are nonviolent drug offenders. This is a waste of resources. We know that the community would rather have the law enforcement community spend their time and their resources on violent crime, on things that actually harm people in the community. Convicted marijuana offenders are denied federal student loans. They can't access professional licenses, and it creates huge barriers to employment, housing, and adoption. But if you're a violent crime, you can get a college loan. So that's sort of weird. I get calls every day from parents, and I can't tell you the number of parents who have called me because their sons or daughters have been arrested for marijuana, went to prison, and came out full-on methamphetamine addicts. Something is very, very wrong, and we need to correct that course right now. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Next up, we have the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws.
We're actually a group that's we're forming a chapter.
Can you just go ahead and identify yourself individually?
My name is Julius Lanuti.
Great. Go ahead.
Jeremy Thorne, Secretary.
Okay.
And
if you both want to testify, that's fine, but...
I'll testify first.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
You know, I'm glad they're bringing up violence, and I want to commend the police of Hawaii for doing a good job of not trying to arrest everybody. We're not like New York City, where we have 90% of people being arrested for possession are blacks and Mexicans, and they have 50,000 arrests a year. We have a lower amount, which doesn't cause as much political pressure, but we do have guns and violence out there. We have gangs, the Crips and the Bloods, and how do they get their money? Selling drugs. I mean, our drug laws might as well be the Drug Cartel Tax-Free Revenue Act, because we are giving them a windfall of incredible amounts of money. They're billionaires, bigger than Bill Gates. They're listed in Fortune 500 now as billionaires. That money could be kept in the United States. There's 800,000 people arrested for pot every year in this country. In the last 20 years, it's been the growingest number of arrests, according to FBI statistics. It's the growingest number of arrests of anything in the country is pot use, marijuana use. It's grown tenfold in the past 20 years, and yet we've hardly dented the use. I mean, we talk about it as if no one's using it, but I remember when I was young, they asked me when I was in high school, do you use pot? And I said, yes, on that thing, and 90% of high school people have used it once. Okay? We can't even field a president. Our last 3 presidents have used it once. As far as access, how does it get much higher than 90%? Will it be 100 one day? You know, I think 10% of the population is sober no matter what. But everybody is trying pot. It's available at schools. We just talked about, he just mentioned a statistic how most of the people coming in for substance abuse counseling are minors. Well, that's because they're getting it. Let's not pretend that it's not getting to children. It is. I mean, I'd rather have it come from a store when my daughter's 18 than a crip at her school. And, you know, I find that there's 20 million users in the country, maybe more. We talk about DUIs.
I'm sorry. It's already... Can you please wrap up?
Okay, I'll wrap up. There's 20 million users. We talk about DUIs. We don't have the same statistics as alcohol. It will never be like alcohol. And then finally, I just want to say, a kid came up to me the other day, and he said he was arrested for a gram and a pipe. I don't know if he was at school, but he got kicked out of school and he got all Fs. And I'm like, is this the purpose of our laws, to ruin lives like that? He was a college student, last day of school.
Okay, thanks very much. What I really should do is call you up at the end of everyone else. Okay, if you want to testify, hang on, and I'll either call your name if you're on the list, or you can come up at the end. Okay, great, thanks. Next up, we have Reliable Drug Testing Services, Inc. In opposition. Next up, we have Richard S. Miller, Professor of Law Emeritus.
Professor Miller asked me to tell you he couldn't be here today, but he very much appreciated you hearing the bill.
Okay, in support. Next, we have Imua Alliance.
Aloha, Chair Rhodes, Vice Chair Har, and members of the committee. We're in support of this bill. What we're trying to do, what the bill tries to do is evince, or rather force a national conversation about the effects of drug policy, and specifically marijuana policy in this country, as you've heard a number of people talk about, in a similar way that, for example, passing gay marriage laws step by step creates a conversation about the efficacy of DOMA, whether you're for or against. So that's the kind of thing that we're having here. We would also note that after the new Washington policy took effect, in Seattle, it also contained a provision similar to this bill prohibiting consumption in public. But I believe the Seattle police force was directed to only issue verbal warnings, verbal citations, when they saw violations of that law. So we wonder if enactment of a state statute here could, at least in theory, evince the same kind of result in Honolulu or in cities across the state. We just want to interject a couple of empirical things. QMark Research did a study that was commissioned by the Drug Policy Action Group. They estimate that legalization would save $12 million in law enforcement costs, and taxation would bring in at least $11 million to the state in revenue at a time when we always desperately need more. And we appreciate some of the comments that were made about alcohol and prohibition because studies nationally have shown that marijuana abuse and dependence afflicts approximately 1.7% of the population, whereas alcohol abuse afflicts approximately 7.5%, and that's over 4 times as high, so over 4 times as many individuals. We do share some of the concerns that were raised by law enforcement about this particular bill. We do feel it's overly broad. For example, it does not contain a specified THC concentration amount regarding what would constitute being under the influence of marijuana for law enforcement purposes, for example, when driving a car, operating a vehicle. Similarly, we share concerns about the impact upon children, so we would encourage, if the bill is to move forward, we would encourage the committee to follow Washington's lead and amend the list of department rules. I'll wrap up with this. Department rules barring the granting of any license to a marijuana establishment within 1,000 feet of schools or advertising within 1,000 feet of schools. And we also have one more amendment regarding labeling requirements that we would respectfully request that you take a look at. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thanks. I'm going to turn it over to my vice chair for the questioning, for questions for the 10 witnesses that we just called. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Caulfield. Members, are there any questions? Representative Thielen.
Thank you. Would the last testifier come up again, please? If you could speak directly in the mic, what were your amendments that you were recommending again? Thank you.
Just give me just a second. We had 3. First, we were concerned that the bill does not specify a THC concentration that would, for example, blood alcohol content for law enforcement purposes and DUI is 0.08. There's no THC concentration outlined in the bill that would be consonant to that. We would suggest a THC concentration of 5.0 or more. That's what was adopted in Washington.
5.0 or more?
5.00 or more. Also, again, we're concerned about the impact upon children. We understand that fully, so we would encourage if the bill is to move forward, we would encourage you to follow Washington's lead and bar the licensing of any dispensaries within 1,000 feet of elementary schools, secondary schools, and such. And similar provision with advertising would be. And then the third amendment that we had proposed was that we mandate marijuana products to be subject to labeling requirements that include, at the very least, the THC concentration amount, similar to when you buy a bottle of alcohol. It tells you what the alcohol percentage is.
Right.
So those were our.
So a lot of what we have in the alcoholic, I guess, arena could be followed for this.
Exactly. And we understand that, for like DUIs, we understand there's a whole statutory system already set up, so we would imagine that it would be ridiculous to try to duplicate that in a whole other chapter. So we wonder if that, I think it's Chapter 291, could be amended.
Sure.
Moving forward.
I see what you're saying. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
And then I wanted to ask the young man back there. Thank you. Must be a generational thing, but you look young to me. You said you're local. You're from here.
Yes.
And what are you pulling together? I mean, it seems to me you're helping young people that get caught in this system.
Not really. What we're doing is we're pulling people who are interested in supporting these. Basically, since Colorado and Washington, I've been inspired. I feel like Coloradans are more free than me, and freedom's precious. You can't put a price on it. It's something. It's coming from within my heart. I don't know how to explain it, but I'm motivated to move these laws forward. And we're having a group that meets monthly. We're actually planning to come out here on the street on the 28th and hold signs, honk for pot. We called a meeting of people who want to join NORML. There was, in the rain on the flash flood day, there was 100 people. I actually have a petition here that we signed. It got all wet, so we made copies. And it's not a legal petition, but it could give you an idea of just this quick on a rainy day. People are out here, and I could give it to you if you'd like. And that's just our start. We're really planning to meet monthly, and when we talked about coming on the 28th and doing a protest, they're talking about they want to, like the group was starting going, we want to go out there monthly and protest down the street. This is a grassroots thing. I'm not, it's just people are coming up. I've run a Facebook ad, and I also promoted parties before because I'm an accountant actually.
Really?
Yeah, in the day I'm an accountant, and I also have a light and sound company, so we do events, and the success rate of this ad is way better than anything else we could do. I spent like $20 and was able to get 100 interested people, and I think we're just trying to grow. We want to have monthly events. We want to monitor this. We're putting in our application to the national normal now, so we're hoping to start a new normal chapter. And we want to be activists and monitor. Things like voters' guides and whatever is recommended by the national normal. We're going to try to implement.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative McDermott.
Yeah, I'd like to ask the gal from the ACLU question.
Ms. Temple?
Thanks for your testimony today. Would you think that perhaps instead of outright legalization and setting up the store type situation, that maybe decriminalization would be more of a reasonable step at this point? We're skipping that part of the process, right?
Sure. Yes.
We're going from a crime to next week selling it. So.
Yeah. Well, it would depend on what decriminalization means to you. So, does decriminalization mean that one will get a ticket, or that one will still face penalties, for instance, denial of certain government benefits, or would it mean that there would be no penalties whatsoever?
That would be for the chair of the Judiciary Committee to decide.
Right.
It's above my pay grade.
Right.
But conceptually, right, we're skipping a whole step here. I'm really conflicted on this issue, but I just wanted to know your thoughts, because I know you're kind of a very libertarian organization.
And ACLU doesn't take a position on taxation, but what really appeals to a lot of people is the idea that we can shift our resources to programs. So, for instance, a prevention and treatment program for drug abusers, or putting more money into our education system rather than putting money from law enforcement costs towards criminalizing or ticketing, for example, with decriminalization. So it's an attractive model for many people, and in a way for us to shift our resources. From the federal level, not having any penalties towards marijuana would not be in a conflict with federal law. So as a state, we're not required to pass any laws criminalizing marijuana. And if we didn't have anything, we would be perfectly in line with federal policy.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And the other question was for Alan Shin,
yes,
Tobacco Free Coalition. Alan, you still here?
I'm here. It's a Coalition for Drug Free.
Coalition for Drug Free. I know you're a photographer, Dave Livingston. Or he past president or something like that. Good man. He is a wonderful man. Alan, one of the concerns I have, and maybe you can address this, is that ironically and paradoxically, I think if you, what's attractive about the legalization is then, I think, ironically, that kids would have less access to it. I grew up in Pennsylvania where they had state stores. To buy whiskey, you had to go into a state store. However, my concern, and this is if they don't have access to marijuana in high school, would the kids try ice, which is devastating? Can you amplify on that?
I can give you an opinion on that. I don't know if I go that far. I think that marijuana causes, most marijuana users are recreational, but we know that a certain percentage of youth and adults abuse and become addicted because of brain chemistry or whatever. And so it does cause them a lot of problems, and so we see that. Whether they would go on to ice, whether you're talking about
it's not available. If marijuana is not available to the kids,
would they go on to other things?
The thing that attracted to me is if it's legalized, paradoxically and ironically, I think it would be less available, because kids can, right now, I got 4 sons in their 20s. Okay, I've got children younger than that. They can, when they were in high school, believe me, You know,
Right.
it is what it is. They can get that very easily on the street. So would they be able to, would it be, if the marijuana is removed from the equation, because you got to go to a store to buy it, right, for the kids, what fills that vacuum is the question. I don't know. You're the Coalition for Drug Free. I don't know.
I don't have an answer for you. I don't think there's any science behind, you know, what's going to happen. I still think that even though it's regulated and sold in retail, it's our youth will still get to it, and that's our concern, and that it's going to be you know, more of a sanction for using because it's legal. So now we have, as we know in Hawaii, we have ohana homes, a lot of them, where we have multi-generations living in the homes, 4 generations. And so now you have, you know, older brothers and sisters, uncles and aunties who are legally using marijuana, but they're bringing it into the home, where there are younger children who can be influenced by that. So really there's a, you know, a problem with that, I think. They become drug dealers for our youth, inadvertently. They're using it in the home legally, and here's the kids there who are, you know, also looking at that and watching and learning.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Representative McDermott. Representative Brower.
Thank you, Julius.
Julius?
Thanks, Julius. So you are an accurate accountant, right?
Yes, I was at the Big Six firm for
Awesome.
7 years.
I just went to the farmer's market today, and I've done research on cannabis. I'd like to include it in my salads because I know there's a lot of healthy medicinal properties if you've done the research. And in concept, I'm supporting the bill for the time being, and I look forward to more discussion. But the issue to me is similar to gambling. You could legalize gambling in Hawaii, but then there's all these unintended consequences. So if marijuana is illegal and we have it everywhere, if it's legal, are we going to have it twice as much more everywhere?
I mean, I don't believe so. I know a lot of people who've tried marijuana and they don't like it for whatever reason. You know, like, I don't think maybe they don't like the way it makes them think. It's not for everybody. I mean, I have numerous friends who don't use marijuana, and I don't think they're going to go around. I mean, I can't see how it can get more available. I mean, really, we can't open a store, but it is there now.
Well, we've seen a lot of problems in California once it's legalized. Now, what's wrong with the system today? If someone needs it for therapeutic purposes, what if we make it a little more available should you have the proper credentials for therapeutic reasons?
I'm perfectly acceptable with that. We're for the reform of marijuana laws, not necessarily. I mean, I support legalization. I mean, go for the whole ball of wax and maybe you'll move an inch. You know, but I do believe that, I mean, look what would happen. Let's talk about what would happen. There would be businesses, assuming there's no federal conflict, we'd probably have little shops opening. If it wasn't marijuana, that would be called business stimulation, you know. But, I mean, Amsterdam isn't a terrible place. I vacation there, you know. I mean,
but they're having problems more recently, right?
Yes. Well, they do. People are robbing them, and you know, there's certain. I mean, there's a crime element that's going to continue, no matter what. And it's you know, But I do believe that it reminds me of Prohibition in the 20s, except back then in the 20s, there wasn't that many pot users. Now, there probably is as many pot users now, regular pot users, as there was in the Prohibition days. We got our Al Capones. We've got our and it's that element that you're going to cut their funding. I mean, you're basically taking the money away from the Mexican cartel. You know what I'm saying? It's our way to attack them right at their where it counts.
I know what you're saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, Chair.
Mr. Shen, are you still here? I can't see you. Yeah, okay. If you can come up again, thanks.
Poor guy.
My question was, I mean, there's several social, I don't know what you call them, practices or ills that have been mentioned today, and at this point we draw the line differently on different ones, and I'm just trying to tease out why we allow some things and why we don't allow others. For example, tobacco smoking is The last I checked was the #1 preventable cause of death in the United States, and I believe in the world, and the numbers are staggering. It's something like a quarter of everybody who, every death in the world is caused indirectly or indirectly by cigarette smoke. But that's legal. Alcohol, which, the statistics have been, some people today have talked about the statistics. That's legal almost everywhere. I mean, Muslim countries, I guess it's not, but, or many Muslim countries it's not. But even there, it's my understanding that people drink it. Gambling is another good example. We don't have it here legally. It's all over the place illegally, but every other state except Utah has it. And what are your thoughts on how you decide where to draw the line?
Well, all I know is that I think if we, add marijuana to that list, we're not doing ourselves any favors.
But is it worse? I mean, is it any worse than alcohol, or I mean, why should, under that reasoning, then shouldn't we criminalize tobacco and alcohol as well?
It really depends. Like I said, we're a prevention and treatment provider, and we see people come in for all kinds of reasons and all kind of drugs, and marijuana is right there. I mean, for those again who are chronically using it and are using the high potency marijuana that we have nowadays. They're having similar problems to people who are, having problems with meth, cocaine, alcohol.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same. You've got the same kind of abuse and addiction kinds of behaviors.
Okay.
And psychological problems.
One last question: do you happen to know whether? I mean, my understanding is that cigarette smokers generally inhale a lot more smoke than Pakalolo smokers do. Just
I wouldn't know that. Representative.
Okay, so my question is, do you know whether Pakalolo smoke causes lung cancer as cigarette smoke does?
Actually, interesting enough, the American Lung Cancer Association issued a opinion on that, and
look for that.
Yeah, you should look for that. It's on there. Yeah. So I think they're saying that they're opposed to marijuana smoking also.
Yeah.
For that same.
Oh, sorry, you'll get a chance. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Members, any other questions? Mr. Shin, I'm sorry, can I have you stay here? Vice Chair has a quick question. So, Mr. Shin, you work for the Coalition for Drug-Free Hawaii, and it seems like a lot of the questions or some of the comparisons seem to be along the lines, well, alcohol is legal, and aren't the effects of alcohol, I mean, it seems like some people seem to be trivializing what we're dealing with respect to alcohol. So, and everyone seems, at least some of the questions seem geared towards the fact that marijuana is less harmful than alcohol. But from your experience dealing with the Coalition for Drug-Free Hawaii, what are you dealing with respect to alcohol?
Yeah, I mean, alcohol certainly is it's a bad drug when it's abused or when there's addiction behaviors associated with its use. So, we treat all the drugs really kind of the same. We don't specialize in any one drug. I think we're looking more at how people can live healthy lifestyles, productive lives, and I think drugs interfere with that and cause dysfunction. And so we're looking at drugs across the spectrum. We're not singling out any particular drug as bad or worse than others. But I think we're simply educating and giving people the information that they need so that they can make informed choices sometimes, but also for parents, they really need to be educated about what can happen to their children.
In your written testimony, you had discussed the retailing of marijuana in the city of Los Angeles. Can you please, can you elaborate on that?
From what we've heard, and we've been trained by Los Angeles Police Department, sent some representatives here for training, and it seemed like the dispensary problem in LA was just out of control. There were so many dispensaries.
So what does that mean by out of control?
It seemed like they were on every street corner. I mean, after a while, it was kind of the Wild West, and everybody was opening up a shop to sell marijuana, and the probably was the city council, maybe it was a city problem also in terms of regulation and control, but it seemed like it was totally out of control, and the criminal element was moving in. There was lots of crime.
So I'm sorry.
Robberies.
Did the city of Los Angeles then, in fact, sanction legally these dispensaries?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as a result, then there was a proliferation of increased crime and violence.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, members. Any other questions? Okay, moving on to the next group of testifiers. We have the Drug Policy Action Group.
afternoon, Chair Rhodes, Vice Chair Har, members of the committee. I'm going to talk really fast. I'm not really going to say what I have in my written testimony because you have it in front of you and a lot of it has been said before. I just want to say that there are 5 other states that are considering laws like this at the moment or soon: Rhode Island, Maine, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts. It's kind of in the air. The bill in front of you today is based on the Colorado model. It's generally considered to be a well thought out, highly regulated model. In the past week, the Governor Hickenlooper and Governor Inslee of Colorado and Washington met with Eric Holder, and nobody put out a press statement saying what went on in those meetings, but both of those states are proceeding to develop rules and regulations to govern their newly enacted law. So we can infer from that maybe they do have bigger fish to fry. Bear in mind that almost all drug arrests are done at the state and local level. And as I think Lori Temple said, the states are not required to enforce federal law. The comparisons to alcohol prohibition, I think, are extremely apt because what they did there was they repealed it state by state. New York was the first, and then they followed. And after 13 long, violence-filled years, they finally did repeal alcohol prohibition. One of the main reasons, and I only learned this recently, there were lots of women's groups involved in the repeal of alcohol prohibition, and one of the reasons was they thought there was too much access for children under this situation where criminals were running the whole show. Criminals don't ask for IDs. That's kind of the bottom line. In terms of the medical dispensary issue, which we keep, getting mixed up with this, Los Angeles and California in general are the worst examples. In Hawaii, we have a chance to do it right. We have no dispensary system for medical marijuana, which I think we should. There's bills afoot to do that. But we have an opportunity to do it right. Finally, I want to say that there was a UCLA study by Donald Tashin, who was a researcher long opposed to the use of marijuana, and he found that it does not lead to lung cancer and, in fact, may have some protective effects, as somebody mentioned. And I think that's, and one final, if I may, most of the visits to the emergency rooms that are marijuana related, that means that there was marijuana in their system. It does not mean that the reason for them to go to the ER was because of marijuana. And similarly with drug treatment, the high numbers of people in drug treatment for marijuana, many of those are court referred. In other words, go to jail or go to treatment. So I think this bill is really well thought out. I think it makes sense for Hawaii. I didn't even have a chance to mention the 57% of Hawaii voters in the recent poll who support it, and others have mentioned the $20 million a year that it would save. Thank you.
Thank you. Drug Policy Forum of Hawaii. I'm sorry, if those of you sitting in the audience, if we could please respect decorum, we would appreciate it. Thank you. Jeannie?
Good afternoon, Chair Rhodes, Vice Chair Har, members of the committee. My name is Jeannie Ota. I'm Executive Director of the Drug Policy Forum of Hawaii. Chair Rhodes, I thank you for holding this hearing. I think it's an important discussion that we must have. And as you can see, there's a lot of discussion around this measure and this issue. I think some of the discussion should be around, at this time when we have continued state and federal budget constraints, is it absolutely necessary for us to continue failed policies? It's been 70 years of federal prohibition against cannabis. We've had a 40-year drug war. Any other organization, like a business, would have said, if you have failed to achieve the results you wanted after 40 years, heck, 70 years, we would have found a different way under those kinds of, have we reached our goals? But in fact, marijuana is still accessible to our children. What is it costing the state? And, everybody say, well, we're treating children, but the question is, are we better off having people in treatment, or are they better off in prison and with a criminal record that affects their futures? Which is better for our society? And the other thing I wanted to point out is, the FBI and the DEA are the federal agencies that keep on cropping up. They have said their focus is on the large drug cartels. So personal possession should not be like the focus of our discussion about federal laws.
And the other thing I want to say about the ONDCP, which is generally called the Drug Czar's Office, they are statutorily prevented in their Reauthorization Act from saying anything in support of either medical marijuana or the legalization of marijuana. So I wouldn't take those agencies as an unbiased source of information. So, I plead with you, please look at look at other resources for your information. And also I want to say that marijuana rates in other countries, like in the Netherlands, have lower use than the United States. Portugal decriminalized all drugs. Their youth rate is lower than the United States. So all of these concerns about increased usage have not panned out in Europe. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sota. Moving on, we have testimony from the Big Island Americans for Safe Access. In support, Kahua Olaho. In opposition, Hawaiian Crane and Rigging Limited. In opposition, Delta Construction Company. In opposition, Miyamoto Legal Services. Hannah, please come on up. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, representatives. Marijuana prohibition has failed. When marijuana laws were first passed a century ago, Mexican immigrants, some African Americans, Arabs, and Turks were basically the only Americans raising the plant and using it. In fact, racism, a desire to create, so to speak, what we now call self-deportation, was the primary justification for marijuana laws at all. Thank you. Today, recreational use of marijuana is not a minority interest, but a permanent part of our culture, and millions of otherwise law-abiding Americans regularly use the drug recreationally. Experience has taught us that marijuana prohibition does not work. As the U.S. Supreme Court said in the 1884 case of Hurtado versus California, law is more than mere will exerted as power. Law identifies harmful conduct for prohibition and uses force to suppress it. However, when the people do not consider a prohibited act harmful, all other laws tend to appear oppressive and unfair. HB 699 should pass to return the law to its proper place of respect. I have also suggested 4 amendments in my written testimony to make HB 699 easier to enforce and fairer to our residents and guests, and I thank for your time, and I welcome your questions later on in this event. Mahalo.
Thank you, Ms. Miyamoto. Moving on, we have testimony from Aaron Zeman. In support, Adam Sear. In support, Alan Gord. In support. Okay, those were the last 10 testifiers. Members, are there any questions for the last 10 testifiers? Representative McDermott.
This young lady right here.
Jeannie Ota.
Thanks
for calling me young.
There you go. So the question I have again, and I'm really conflicted on this because, like I said, I got 4 boys in their 20s, and it is what it is, okay? I think if we were to legalize it, and I'm just guessing, and if anybody has the answer, Chair, if you have it, please let me know. If we legalize it, and you go to the store and buy it, it's going to be all labeled. It won't be just in a plastic bag. We have no idea what's in there. It'll be Colombian gold. Here's 6 doobies for $50 or whatever it is. People will go there and buy it there. They won't go to the overweight guy on the corner anymore because they want quality. They know what they're getting. They will go there and they'll use that. My question again is, so it will move away from the underground. It's going to disappear because I don't think people will say. Some people will say. I don't think they'll use. So the question is, that vacuum I talk about. It won't. The kids. What will they go to ice, which is devastating and cheap? I mean, I don't know. I'm ignorant on this. That's why I'm asking.
So, anecdotally, but we don't have scientific data that said when we started to crack down with the green harvest on the Big Island is when the ice problem started to emerge. So when marijuana became less available and more expensive because of the crackdown, that the cheaper drug
which was meth, became the preferred drug. So, but Alan's mentioned we don't have like that scientific, but if we look at countries like the Netherlands and Portugal, where they've changed their drug policy and used more of a more liberal policy, they've been able to control usage.
I don't dispute that. So what, and this is my last question, so what you just said troubles me, because that's my fear, is that if it's off the street where you can't go down to the guy I'm thinking of, Fat Tony. You can't go down to Fat Tony and go get what you want. You have to get mom or dad to go get it for you, or you're a teenager. This is who I'm concerned about, teenagers. I really am. So what you're saying is the Green Harvest crackdown, so it removed it from the teens, and that's what I think if we legalize it, we'll remove it from the teens as well. That's why I would, if I knew kids weren't going to have access to it, I'd be more supportive of it. But then,
so what I'm talking about anecdotally was not just teens; it was like the general market. So I'm not saying
I misunderstood.
It was the teens,
because that's my concern is the teens.
Yeah. And no one is saying that we should make drugs available to teens. I think we all agree they have growing brains that are not fully developed, and that putting anything that may affect that development is not good. What I think we're saying is that the money that we're putting into a criminalization approach could be used in a public health manner where we a bit more time and energy into educating people about the drugs. For instance, we've done that with tobacco, we've done that with all while they were legal. The fact that we have some drugs that are legal and some drugs that are illegal and some drugs that are prescription. Confused, what really is a dangerous drug? Is it because they're all better? And we have farm parties because those are prescription drugs, not the so-called illicit drugs. I think our handling of the drug policy has been horrible.
One follow-up, and then I'll yield the chair. So if you tax it and you tax marijuana, again, the thrust is what's attractive to me is I think it'll be less available to kids. That's why I think, even though you legalize it, paradoxically, the kids won't be able to get to it because you have to ask mom or dad to go buy it for you, or somebody's over 21, they don't want to mess with a 15-year-old. But if something like this were to pass, would you want to see something in the language that those tax, at least the majority of those tax funds, go to educate the kids in school to stay off of ice, because that's really deadly, and create the attitude like we have towards smoking, where you're a pariah. If you smoke a cigarette, you get out of here,
Well,
right? That's worked.
Yeah,
You're
I wouldn't single out one drug. So, a drug
that's
policy
the worst
shouldn't,
one, right?
But you need to talk about all the harms of, huffing, paint, glue. There's a lot of, the kids huff.
She said, I've never heard that before.
Yeah, so we need to talk. And so I wouldn't say all of the money, because we need treatment as well as prevention and education.
Cocktail.
In the United States budget, 2/3 of the money for drug policy goes toward law enforcement. Only 1/3 goes to treatment and prevention. Don't you think it should be reversed?
Yeah, I don't know exactly, but I'd like to see the education. Okay, I'll yield back. I'm sorry. Thank you for your indulgence.
Ms. Soto, see that. And members, any other questions? Chair?
Ms. Odo, if you don't mind coming back, sorry. Didn't speak fast enough.
She prefers the term young lady.
Young lady?
Thank you.
So to play devil's advocate for a moment, the argument is made that the war on drugs and the criminalization of Bakalolo has just failed miserably. But I guess to me it's like, well, so is the prohibition against murder, which has been around since Hammurabi's code. It hasn't worked. People still get murdered. So what do we do? You have to look at it in terms of degree and
degree, yeah. And I think
what's the degree we're looking at in terms of? Do you have any numbers to say? I guess if you can quantify or describe what failure means, or what you're describing as failure.
Failure means continued access, in fact, increased access to the drug, right? They're available, there's more available. The price is still low, right? When you change a market and it's working, the price of a product should be really high, should get higher. The prices are still low. So I think that, and the fact that it's so widespread, that people feel that we shouldn't be sending people to prison for this activity. I think that's a failure. You haven't been able to convince the general population.
I mean, I guess, is it a failure, or is it just an activity that a big chunk of society, whatever the poll numbers say, it's just accepted behavior, and people just don't view it as bad enough to be criminalized anymore? I mean, in that sense, it's not a failure. It's just society just doesn't care.
Well, society has said that we don't think that this is something that should be criminalized, that we're going to participate, right?
We can elect a president who admits he smoked pot.
We're going to flaunt the laws. So, that brings up the other thing, is the disregard for a law. Is that what we want? We want our laws to mean something to the populace. We want them to be meaningful. And they've already said this is not a meaningful one to us.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, but I think, sure.
I'm sorry, Ms. Sota, before you go. And I'll still call you young lady. Ms. Sota, okay, so really then the crux of your testimony is essentially that enforcement with respect to marijuana enforcement is not working, correct?
Our current policy, yeah. The criminalization is not just enforcement.
Okay, so then and this is sort of a follow-up to what Chair Rhodes is asking. And instead of using the word failure, I'm going to use the word enforcement. So if that's the case, then is the Drug Policy Forum of Hawaii then advocating for the legalization of something, let's say, crystal meth? Because enforcement isn't working on crystal meth either, right? People are still doing it. So are you folks now saying you're advocating for the legalization of crystal meth?
Okay, so we're not singling out one drug, but what we're saying is that we think a public health approach, which is what we're using on alcohol and tobacco, right? More public health approach, rather than using the criminal to work better with less money to treat our drug issue, to treat drug abuse.
So I understand that's more of a general policy statement.
So we have to be on.
But then theoretically, you could in fact, though, because if using your logic, then essentially you should in fact criminalize cocaine, PCP, because again, it's about not necessarily criminalizing it, but dealing it in a larger policy context. So in fact, you folks could be advocating for decriminalization of, let's say,
Just saying, for instance, Portugal decriminalized, and what they use is a more public, you get 3 chances, you get caught with something, you go before a treatment or recommend some other alternative method for them to recommend to you, and you have to either go to a treatment program or there's whatever. That works better. So we're not saying there's no sanctions, it's free-for-all, but use treatment, public education to talk about what's dangerous for us.
But the laws are there to protect people. And so once you break the law, why are we now having to move to this bigger policy discussion? You break the law, you break the law. That's what it is.
So you protect people from themselves is what you're saying. Because what happens is when you protect somebody from themselves, you put them in prison and give them an even bigger problem, which is they're either not treated for the addiction, they come out, and now because of their criminal record, they can't get jobs, they can't get housing.
Nobody forced them to do the drugs, though.
But the government made it.
That could have been a choice.
The government made it a criminal activity. Drugs only became a criminal activity when it was put into the Controlled Substances Act.
Okay, so in other words, let me get back to the original question. So whether it's PCP, cocaine, crystal meth, the Drug Policy Forum of Hawaii could in fact advocate, because you're talking about decriminalization, you're moving away from decriminalization, you're talking about it in a bigger policy context, treatment, those education, as opposed to in fact then enforce, you could in fact advocate something like decriminalizing.
I'm not speaking that we will. I'm saying yes, we could. That could be in the future.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Let's have that discussion.
Thanks, Ms. Sota. Okay, members, any other questions? Representative Thielen.
Thank you. Ramona, do I have the right name? Yes. I'm sorry, if you don't mind coming up. I'm not sure if someone named Allison Frazier is here. Okay, then you seem to be such an expert on this. I have and don't look shy. I have a question. Allison Frazier is a culturalist who says that there should be an absolute requirement in the bill that marijuana, cannabis, be grown organically. And the reason is that, according to this horticulturist, it has positive medicinal value, a pure and effective treatment for chronic pain, powerful antidepressant, and anti-anxiety medication. And I'm wondering if you could just comment on any of that, if you know, and if you don't, I'll wait till others come up. I wasn't aware of medicinal, these rather strong medicinal qualities.
I would emphasize that a lot of the complaints about the idea that marijuana is illegal, it's dangerous, is because we don't have adequate research on it. Remember, as a Schedule I narcotic under federal law, the drug cannot be tested. There's only one place in the country where it could be grown legally under federal law for any kind of research. It cannot be tested. Now I'm going to put on my sociologist hat, and what someone did earlier said, it's absolutely terrible science that's going on here, but there's no double-blind testing going on. There's no placebos. There's nothing that would stand up in any I'm amazed it stands up in a court of law, because it certainly wouldn't stand up in any responsible academic conference where we have to have, proper protocols. So what I'm going to suggest to you is perhaps a great deal of the problem in marijuana dangers to children, to anybody, is because it's illegally grown, it's illegally processed, it's mixed in with adulterated chemicals, it may be, and all kinds of things can go on. Without any regulation and restrictions, you buy your little dime bag, you'd have no idea where it came from, what's in it. And so that's another reason why legalization makes a lot of sense, to protect the people from unscrupulous providers.
Can you just comment on the idea of requiring it to be grown organically?
Well, I'm sorry, Representative Thielen, that's not her testimony. Was that her testimony? Did not
no,
in fact
that's
talk,
my question.
Why is she qualified to talk about that when that was not her testimony? You should be asking those questions to the person who submitted that testimony, Representative Thielen.
That person isn't here, and I'm asking if you could just comment on the concept of whether or not
I think
we
the
should
concept
require
is
that.
sound. I wouldn't know if I want to require it, because I'm always a person who believes in the fair market and a properly informed consumer.
Okay, so in the fair
But
open market,
this person certainly may very well be right that, and certainly organic, whatever, no pesticides, whatever, might very well be safer. And and again, that's some of the. Remember, any drug, the only drug we're really talking about here is THC. Everything else that's coming into it, including the rolling papers and whatever else, we have no control over unless we provide this legally.
Okay.
Can I add one more point? I want to say that as far as medical marijuana, this goes to my piece about respect for the law. My concern with legal marijuana, medical marijuana, is that it's another example of flouting the law. We all only have to open up a city pages to see an ad for a supposed doctor who will write you a prescription based on your say so. That's just flouting the law. That's just allowing people with a little bit more money to have whatever they want, and everybody else, and that's why I'm opposed. In other words, I understand the need for medical marijuana. I know people who definitely are helped by our laws, but I also don't. People are just pretending to obey the law. I want people to obey the laws that people will actually agree on. And as far as PCB and LSD, the simple answer is the general body of the public understands those to be dangerous drugs, largely through experience, by the way. And that's where always that paradox is, right? So many people know about drug policy because so many people have used drugs and experimented with them.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Ms. Miyamoto. Okay, moving on. We have testimony from Alan Yosh in support, Alex Sasaki Tom in support, Allison Frazier in support, Hige. High school student in support, Ann Yabusaki in opposition, Anna Serp in support, Anthony Julius Lanati in support, Arlene Fountain in opposition, Ashley Rosenfeld in support. That was 10 testifiers. I guess we have no one to ask questions to. So we'll move on. Barbara in support, Barbara Best. In support, Ben Novick with comments. In support, Bill Smith. In support, Bob Graybosch. In support, Brenda Jose or Brenda Joes. Brenda Merriweather. In support, Carl Rozicki. In support, Carmen Stevens. In support, Chris Nagy. In support, Christian Martin. And Olanda. In opposition, Clifford Sam. In support, Cody Fry. In support. That was 10. We have no testifiers to whom to ask questions, so we'll move on. Cynthia Lieb Johnson. In support, Daniel Hempy. In support, Daniel Ciccone. In support, David Allen. In support, David Leake. In support, Deborah Lopez. In opposition, Dennis Nishihara. In opposition, Doug Fine. In support, Douglas oh, I'm sorry. You're Mr. Fine?
That's me.
Okay. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for holding this hearing.
Thank you for being with us today.
Vice Chair Hart and the rest of the committee. Gosh, I really wish Representative McDermott were here because I'm going to address some of the questions that he has. I don't know if he's still around or has taken off, but I come to you today from Maui via New Mexico. But the book that I just completed, about which I'm going to devote most of my testimony, is called Too High to Fail, Cannabis in the New Green Economic Revolution, which was a study of Mendocino County, California, which acknowledged its, from the Board of Supervisors, which is the county government, through the Sheriff's Department and throughout the community, acknowledged its $6 billion local agricultural community. The #1 currently federal sanctioned crop of grapes is at $74 million, so local kids with green thumb are tending to go into the cannabis arena. And yes, on the organics, first of all, vital sustainability guidelines written into it. Unmitigated success. I've provided a copy of this book to Chair Rhodes as well as to Speaker SOUKI, but if anybody else on the committee, and please pass it on to the others, wishes to get a copy, my contacts are in my testimony. I'll be glad to get a copy to everyone because the program was an unmitigated success. I'm an investigative journalist of 2 decades experience reporting for the New York Times, National Public Radio, and elsewhere. I came in agnostic. I'm a father. All I want is the safety of my kids. And the program saved public safety jobs, raised $600,000 based on permitting 100 farmers in its first main year. This is the photo I like to show everyone of the sheriff shaking hands with the cannabis cultivator, and what he said was, what the sheriff said was, it wasn't just the funds raised, it wasn't the lowered crime locally, it wasn't the increase to the economy and the taxes raised and any of it. It was bringing an entire segment of the population into the legal, law-abiding fold, no longer criminals. And so he was saying he got calls on domestic violence, other things where people could never call before, but now the sheriff's zip tie was these little bracelets each plant had, 99 plants, by the way, per farm, and unmitigated success. I want to quickly at the very end here tie it into a Hawaii story here. I've been here for a while. I gave a talk on this book at Maui College the other day, and I've been going around. I'm also a sustainability journalist. I live without petroleum in my life for the most part, except when I'm flying over here to testify. And I was at a farmer's market and was asking a lot of questions, and after several years of researching this, I'll ask anyone now, oh, do you also grow cannabis? And what one farmer told me is, finding out who I was and that I was coming here to testify, and he asked me to pass on to you guys, is that he said, this is the only area in my life in which I am not a law-abiding citizen, and I'm tired of it. It's a plant that is part of the culture here. It is deeply embedded in the culture, for better or for worse. Please allow us to not be criminals on this one count so that I can live fully above ground and I don't have to whisper. And I said thank you as I bought my organic avocados and my organic other stuff from him, coconuts from him and whatever. So I'm probably well over 2 minutes, so I'll take questions. I can answer. I can speak to the federal quagmire as well, because there are some good questions about the issue of what to do while federal law is as it is.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Fine, and thank you for flying over from Maui today. Next up, we also have Douglas Campbell in support, Dr. Gregory Hungerford in support. That was the last 10 testifiers. Members, are there any questions? Representative Thielen.
My colleague came back, and if you could come back up, please.
Representative Thielen, are there questions?
Because I would like to ask the question for him. It seemed to me that you had an answer dealing with his concerns.
So, in addition to what's already been stated about Portugal and the Netherlands, youth rates dramatically lower upon legalization. So what now the sociologists are doing is saying, how is this happening? That we're saying we're eliminating the stigma and we're eliminating the legal the problems associated with using all drugs in the case of Portugal, but cannabis in the case of Amsterdam. How is it that youth rates are going down? And I'm sure a lot of dissertations are going to be into this, but that is the case. In the county that I researched in this book, I was just testifying about, likewise, overall crime in the county dramatically reduced by taking the criminal element out of cannabis. So I'm a father of two. I have a 4.5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old. I don't care about anything in this world more than their safety. And I came to the research of this agnostic, and my conclusion is public safety is drastically increased by ending what will shorthand the war on cannabis.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Do you think that part of the reason that it drops, and this is all anecdotal enough, right, is because it's not quote unquote cool anymore? Because if mom and dad can get it, it's not cool.
If you watch Ken Burns' PBS documentary on alcohol prohibition, that's the prevailing historian take today about alcohol prohibition, is that it created Al Capone, and when it went away, there's no more bootleggers, no more Dukes of Hazzard guys. It's for better or for worse, you ID people, and you have to be 21 years old. Now, in fairness, when I was under 21 years old, we knew where the liquor store was that kind of looked the other way or didn't check the fake IDs. There's always going to be abuse of the laws, but as has been pointed out in other testimony, criminals don't ID. It has never been more widely available than it is today. It can only get less available. I speak at high schools all the time on this, and I ask, how many people here believe, and this is all over the nation, how many people here believe cannabis is easier to get than alcohol today if you're underage? And almost every hand goes up every time.
Sure.
I'm a big believer that it's going to get better. I say that as father and a journalist.
You don't have to convince me of that. Where did you grow up, by the way?
I grew up on Long Island. New York.
Okay. All right.
And but I live on a solar-powered goat ranch in New Mexico for years now. And this report I did was in Mendocino County, California. Quick postscript, if I could, I'll make this very, very quick. I spoke to him afterwards in the hall, the young man that suggested THC limits as an amendment. And when I pointed out what I'm going to point out to you, he said, I had no idea. If you're testifying, tell him. It is one of the, journalistically speaking, worst elements of the Washington initiative that there are THC limits, because THC stays in your system for a month, whereas acute intoxication, if any, there's some studies, believe it or not, I hate to say this because I sound like Cheech and Chong, there are some studies that show actually mild, experienced cannabis users that have smoked it on the same day actually become slightly better drivers, and the only explanation the scientists give, they're so surprised by it, and if members want, I'll forward you the study, these are real university studies, is that maybe they realize that they have used cannabis and therefore they're being extra careful. But I wouldn't advocate that. I would never drive myself under the influence of anything, and I would never want that for the safety of my children. But I just want to point out that arbitrary THC limits with no studies going on is very difficult, because if you're acutely intoxicated for, say, 3 hours and it's in your system for a month, and so instead of just proposing problems, very quickly propose solutions, what we need is a new system of law enforcement test for intoxication that transcends any particular intoxicant, because our real addiction, besides alcohol, is pills, is Xanax, and people are driving on OxyContin all the time. Those people are the ones we need to be testing, in addition to anyone who may be abusing alcohol. And so we need to have not so much this limit on this limit on that, but a law enforcer that decides whether or not a secondary test needs to be done, et cetera, et cetera. So.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fine. Okay, moving on. We have Dr. Myron Burney in support. Oh.
We've waited a long time to testify.
Yes, thank you, Mr.
A number of years.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Burney.
I've been sending you a lot of emails, so you have a lot of.
It's nice to put a face to a name. Thank you for being here this
A few
afternoon.
months ago, my house was terrorized by the Honolulu Police Department. I'm a terminal cancer patient. Obviously, I look pretty good because
You do.
natural cancer wellness works. We have a cure for cancer. The state of Hawaii doesn't like that idea. You know, medical doctors really don't like that idea. And now there's published peer review articles that support my theory and therapy. Anyway, to make a long story short, they busted in my house, they stole all my medicine in the middle of a vomiting episode. I usually vomit for about 2 or 3 days, have to go to the hospital and get IV fluids. Instead, they stole all my medicine, they put me in jail, they wouldn't give me any medical care. It's a horrific situation, it's totally criminal. The problem, what do you mean by failure? By failure, I mean that you're doing more harm than the marijuana. What you're doing to people is more harmful to society than the marijuana, than the drug. The drug itself really isn't harmful. It doesn't have to be good for everybody. People are depressed for a lot of reasons. Marijuana is actually an antidepressant. We know it's a mood elevator. It's not going to be good for everybody. It doesn't have to be good for everybody. All it has to do is be a medicine. We are a nation of laws. The crime is called a color of law crime. Only Obama could enforce it, and that's violating my constitutional right to medical care. Primary thing is you have to protect my right to life. Once it's a medicine, you don't have any laws on abortion, shouldn't have any laws on marijuana either. Because marijuana is therapeutic. It doesn't get to be therapeutic because the doctor said it was. It's therapeutic because that's the nature of the herb. People that enjoy marijuana, that are chronic users or recreational users, they're getting the same therapy as a sick person. They're getting the anti-stress. What marijuana actually does is it balances all the hormones and the nerves and the organs of the body. Marijuana is a reverse. It's the opposite of like Prozac that wastes your brain. It rejuvenates your nerves. So I'm open for questions. I'm only a medical expert here. And I've also sent you one paper on the state constitution. We don't have any attorneys here, but we had one attorney. But marijuana is already legal constitutionally in Hawaii because of the right of privacy. In Hawaii is the exact same language as the right of privacy that came out of Alaska. And when you bring over the same language, you bring over the Supreme Court decisions, and the ACLU lady knows that it was just reaffirmed. The right of privacy in Alaska, in Hawaii, protects the use in your own home.
Thank you, Dr. Burney, and thank you for being with us this afternoon. I have written testimony from Duke in support, Elijah Ariel in support, Elizabeth Davis in support, Emerson Frank in support, Peter Erhorn. Mr. Erhorn, please come up. Did I pronounce your last name correctly? Yes. Erhorn? Thank you for being with us this afternoon, and thank you for waiting.
Sit here.
Please.
It's his first time being gentle.
Got it, Terry.
Hi, my name is Eric Peter Erhorn, and I'm testifying as an individual in favor of this bill. Prohibition has never worked, and it should be ended immediately. You know, during alcohol prohibition, I don't know how many people know this, but at the end of prohibition, there were more drinkers than there were at the beginning of prohibition. Now, that is a fact. That is a fact. And so, by doing these laws against drugs, you are increasing the use of drugs. My problem with marijuana over the years is that it's gotten too strong. I prefer the weed that I had in college. It was called mishmicot. Mexican weed, it was mild, mellow, didn't knock you out. And actually, there was a study, I remember,
that if you took a little bit of marijuana, your driving will improve. Now that's just a little bit, because if you had too much, then it goes down rapidly. But that's a fact. So marijuana should just be legalized, and actually, it shouldn't be taxed too much, just a little bit.
That's a Republican point of view.
And you probably shouldn't have age limits. Let everybody use it. Well, because Bob was mentioning about, when I was growing up, it was easier to get pot than it was alcohol, and the reason was because they had more restrictions against alcohol. It was harder to get, but pot you can get it from just about anybody. So if you legalize marijuana and keep it from kids, they will find somebody else. They will find something else. They might mushrooms. I don't think they'll go to crystal meth, but lower the limit, the age. And finally, to close. Oh, I forgot.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ahern. Thank you for being here this afternoon. Okay, moving on.
Bob, we miss you at Rotary.
Ethan Onipa'a Porter, in support. Faye Reese-Brenner, in support. Gail Swanson, in support. In support. That was the last 10 people. Members, any questions? If not, I'll turn it right back over to Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Gershon Bukuro in opposition. Graham Ellis in support. Heather Lusk in support. Hoku in support. Hugh Starr in support. Michael Landis in support. James Coons in support. James Macy in support. All right, I'm just going to keep reading them fast, and if I go by it, jump up and come on up. James Trujillo, or Trujillo. All those were in support except for Jeremy Nickel, who had comments. Joe Bertram, former state representative, in support. John Smith in support. John Ray in support. Jonathan Barkley in opposition. Jonathan Newton in support. Jorge Veras in support. Joseph A. Bobich. Here. Come on up. Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Bobich. Thank you for driving all the way out from Kapolei. And you too, Ms. Heedy. And you too, Mr. Souza.
I begin with a bow to you all, because I am so gratified to see legislators that are willing to look reality in the eye and not blink. And I applaud you and all of the other legislators that have introduced bills in support of the legalization of marijuana. Before I retired, I was a professor of chemistry at Texas Christian University for 34 years. My whole professional career of about 40 years specialized in brain chemistry, particularly the mechanism of neurotransmitter release. It seems to me that the central question that you are wrestling with is whether or not marijuana is addictive. And the overwhelming body of data show clearly that it is not addictive. These data are about as firm as the data in support of global warming being real. Now, having said that, that then makes the federal law scheduling marijuana in Schedule 1 simply silly. And we know that when silly laws remain on the books, it fosters disrespect for the law. Now, my approach is to use passive nonviolent resistance, and I'm really glad to see that that's what this bill does. In my written testimony, I pointed out a few minor changes that I think should be made to the bill. Most significant ones are to define marijuana and to define personal use, because the bill becomes a little squirrely without them. In addition, I would add on page 8, line 18, a phrase saying that the cost of licensure should be $5,000 or less comparable and can increase in inflation, as appears in some of the other legalization bills. The other suggestions that I made are purely cosmetic. Yeah, I do see some potential societal problems that could result from this legislation. But the current law made me, a law-abiding citizen, into a criminal. And that's just plain wrong. So the current law needs to be changed.
I'm sorry, could you find a place to wrap up?
Okay, I don't think we need half measures. The bill as it is written is basically fundamentally very good, and I support it strongly.
Thank you very much. Next up we have Judy Lowy in opposition, Justin Hollenbaugh in support, Kalama in support, Kanoa Merriweather in support, Kathy Dasis in support, Carrie Marks in support, Kevin Carter in support, Kevin Yoshioka in support, Killian Caldwell in support, Kimberly Harrison in support. Okay, that's the end of the page. I'll go ahead and see if anybody has any questions for the witnesses that have just come up. Members? Okay, seeing none, let's go ahead and move on to the next page of witnesses. Kualoha Olamau in opposition, Lonnie Michael in support, Lannon Oldenburg in support, Larry Caldwell in support, Larry John in support, Lee Eisenstein in support, Leighton Lum in opposition, Lisa Ann Tomita in opposition, Lisa Hanabusa in opposition, Lori Lay Nishida in opposition, Lauren Okumura in opposition, Marcy Colton Crilly RN in support, Marilyn Mick in support, Mark Fredette in support, Mark Nelson in support, Marnie Nishimura in opposition, Marsha Nakasone in opposition, Mary Esposito Bevel in support, Mary Rose Ho'ona Kailahi Anderson in support, Mason Swanson in support, Matthew Binder in support, or Bender, Matthew Rifkin in support, MCCFDIA in support, Michelle Chong in support, Michelle Lagunoy Doi in opposition, Michael Ruggles in support, and Mile Aiello in support. Sorry. Okay, moving on. Mimsy Boret in support. Momo in support. Monica Brissett in opposition. Myrna M. Iwanasa in opposition. Nancy DeVlantis in support. Nancy Miranda in support. Nathan, come on up. Nancy Miranda, was it?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here, and thank you very much for holding this session today. When I decided to move from my hometown, I literally Googled my top 3 points on where to live. I searched for cleanest air quality, best land to grow my own food, and family values. I chose Hawaii because it supports a biblical-based lifestyle. I'm in favor to pass this HB699 bill to decriminalize adult cannabis use. I monitor precisely how and what I nourish and cure my body with. When I get a headache, I would much rather cure myself with a natural remedy than pop a pill that's been constructed in a lab. On a recreational level, if I have a tough, tense day at work, I'd rather eat cannabis than drink a brandy. Alcohol use in this state has contributed to more than half of all traffic deaths, according to the National Highway Safety Administration. As a regular voter, I ask that you continue to use your judicious integrity, your same awareness that validates Pakalolo as an unrefined therapeutic practice for medical patients. Give our residents the free will to consume Pakalolo. Studies shown it's a non-habit substance and promotes peace. There's not one study showing Pakalolo on its own anywhere on earth has led to death, ever. Its intended use has proven to nourish kindness, self-reflection, improve one's senses, and aid in healing psychologically and spiritually. I'd like to see incorporated into the law that cannabis is grown organically for the health of its users and Hawaii's land. And also, the federal law is a little contradictory because They personally themselves mail 4 canisters filled with 300 pre-rolled joints to 4 patients in the United States under their compassionate law, and it's grown and cultivated by the University of Mississippi. Looks like they might have a little spirit of aloha. Thank you for your time.
Thanks very much. Next up, we have Nathan Lanham in support, Nicholas Park in support, Nilo Ataie in support, Nina Ota in opposition, Pam Brewer-Fink in support, Patients Without Time in support, Patrick Compton in support, Patty in support, Philip Collier in support, Philip L. Valentine Jr. in support, Phyllis Wyndham in support, Herban Legend Cannabis Shop in support, Rachel Ray Al-Hoon in support, Rafael Marquez in support, Raven in support, Reed Sagawa in opposition, Reverend Claudia Charters in support, Reverend Manuel Newman in support, Rico Tubbs in opposition, Ricky Shimabukuro in opposition. Okay, well, I guess we better stop there just so would anyone like to ask questions of Nancy Miranda? Members? Okay, seeing none.
I'm sorry, is the gentleman from Kapolei?
Oh, yeah, he was actually on the last page, but if you want to ask him a question now, go ahead.
If I may, yes, thank you. Sorry, the 2-minute thing becomes very fast, and my mind sometimes takes 3 minutes to get around it. Could you give me your background again?
I received my BS in chemistry from the University of Michigan, my PhD at UCLA in biological chemistry. Ooh. I then spent 2 years on a Multiple Sclerosis Society postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Cambridge in England and the University of Göteborg in Sweden. I then was hired by Texas Christian University in 1973 as an assistant professor of chemistry, and I rose through the ranks until my wife was disabled and we had to retire.
So, my word, that's impressive. I wanted to ask, is there some research that has gone on or is going on through internationally on the benefits of cannabis? There's
quite a few beneficial effects that have appeared in the literature. I brought a few examples of it. It seems to be particularly effective in certain kinds of cancers. And to just kind of summarize broadly, marijuana seems to be bad for young people under the age of 18. There was a very large, thorough study that demonstrated that. But as a corollary, that study also demonstrated that it is not harmful for people over 18. And in fact, it seems to be kind of good for old people. I'm 70, and it seems to help with things like arthritis, pain, anxiety in particular. It's been shown to be effective. I can pass along these references that I've printed out and summarized. With regard to driving, I think one of the societal problems is that you're going to need to rewrite the drunk driving laws, because polydrug users would present a problem that you're going to you can't say 0.08 alcohol plus 10 micrograms or whatever cannabis means you're over the limit. If they use both at the same time, you need to reduce those limits a bit. The other thing, it seems to me that this legislation sort of puts marijuana in with alcohol, and there's one thing in the bill that represents a problem to me, and that is where it says that it shouldn't be legal to consume it publicly. Now, that's a significant discrepancy from the way society treats alcohol, and if that stays in the bill, are you going to not have coffee houses, for example? I think this is something that needs to be thought about in a bit more detail. Also, as the bill is written now, it is legal for anyone over 21 to present a demonstration that they are over 21. Does that mean that tourists will be allowed to purchase marijuana by presenting demonstration of their age? there's good and bad in that part of the bill that needs to be, I think, reflected on more.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Before you go, just on the question of tourists, you see allowing tourists to smoke it as a bad thing or a good thing? Or
I think it's a mixed thing. I mean, I think if you clearly let tourists know that this is a substance that's going to make them stupid and they should be careful not to fall off hotel balconies when they're using it, I think warnings need to be issued. Otherwise, it could become a problem.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Because you're going to be having Chinese and Japanese tourists experimenting here.
Right.
Could be a problem.
Okay. Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay. Moving on. Next up, we have Roadrunner in support. Next, we have Robert Patrici in support. Robert Slavin in support. Rodney Evans in support. Rita Cabradilla in support. I'm sorry, Ryan Cabradilla in support. What can I say? Sabrina Fawn in opposition. Sandra Albers in support. Sarah Steiner in support. Sarah Daigle in support. Scott Saiki in support. Sean M. Costello in support. Sean Gu in support. Sherry Shimabukuro in opposition. Sharif Bari in support. Sean Powers in support. Shirley Rodman in support. Ted Orston in support. Terry Heed in support. Thane Taylor in support. Thomas Kaneshiro in support.
Terry, yeah.
Terry Heedy, sorry.
I grab my bag. Trust me, there's no gun to it. It's all right. You're sweet.
Do we have visual effects here?
Oh, we have.
Yeah.
We, of course.
For those of you who don't sound finance, this is
See, we start off because I know this is about total legalization, all right? But I'm a medical patient. I've been testifying for a long time. I start telling you about Monday and Wednesday and Friday, which gets really good. And then, on top of all of that, we have these. I won't stack them up because it'll take way more than 2 minutes to stack all these things up. And you know what I did? I traded all of these for that bag of stinky stuff that you didn't like. I said that's a much better option for me. And with multiple sclerosis, again, I've been to 3 different countries. I've talked to all kinds of doctors. But after I got my blue card and I could go and stop this, which, by the way, my neurologist says I did the right thing, I'm a criminal. I'm immediately a criminal. Where do I go get? Where do I get my medication? Where do I get seeds? Where do I get plants? If I want to stay legal, where do I go get this stuff? No place. I'm on the black market. I am a criminal. And I've never been a criminal. I've been a disabled vet. I've been a mother, a grandmother, soccer coach. I've been a computer engineer, believe that or not. Because when you Google me, you don't get that anymore. All you get is pot. I smoke pot. Because I've become so active in this movement. We need to legalize this. I'm not following my script. So you're going to have to read my testimony. But, you know, I've been hassled by law enforcement. I've been harassed by law enforcement. Of all people, me. You know? So, but they have not helped this program a bit. And they give you propaganda instead of facts. And you're having to make your decision based on a bunch of propaganda. It's not for real. There are studies out there. There's a Danish study out there, which is very rare. They actually have a control group where they talk about, remember how they talked about cannabis psychosis or something this guy is talking about? They finally did a study. They found out the people that were going to be psychotic, they're going to be psychotic anyway. Pot got nothing to do with it. It's not going to cure them. It's not going to help them. They're just going to be crazy. Batshit crazy. Nothing going to stop that. But all I can tell you is please, thank you for hearing this today, but please, polling indicates everybody is with me on this. We're saying, just legalize it. Just do it. We'll protect our children better. We'll protect our neighborhoods better. What they told you about the dispensaries and the other kind of thing, you're worse off if you got a liquor store in your neighborhood than a dispensary. You know, so just consider the source of that information. You know, your police unions, they get $12 million worth of overtime and all these other people. Consider they're the ones telling you all about this. And they don't know. But thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much. Thanks for waiting so long. Next up is Thane Taylor in support, Thomas Kaneshiro in support, Thomas Tribble in support, Tim Max in support, Tom Galley in support, Tyler Martinez in support. Victor Latzenser in support. Vincent Calger in support. Wendy Araki in opposition. Winnie Key in opposition. Members, any questions for Ms. Heedy?
Yeah, before I leave.
I'd like to ask.
Representative Carr.
In the interest of full disclosure, Ms. Heedy
Yes,
is
I
my
voted for you. Yes, I did.
she is my constituent. Thank you for your passionate testimony.
Thank you.
First and foremost, I've always told you look fantastic. I'm happy to see that you're not in a wheelchair anymore. Terry, you talked about the fact that you are a medical marijuana patient, and you talked about the fact that you had the permit, but you weren't not able to obtain the plants. It's my understanding under current state law for medical marijuana, we allow 3 mature plants and 4 immature plants, correct?
Correct.
But because you were not able to you didn't know where to buy the plants from, essentially, whether it's black market, however you obtained it, you are now treated like a criminal, notwithstanding the fact that the state had legalized medical marijuana. So that being said, if we could fix the medical marijuana law and bypass this, would that still be a viable alternative? Because I've talked to other medical marijuana patients such as yourself, and I've always had a lot of compassion for medical marijuana users. And the fact is I don't think the intent of the law was to ever criminalize those medical marijuana patients. But again, we were conflicted with dealing with the federal law. We didn't want the feds to come in and execute their search warrants, raid, whatever. So we just wanted to ensure that at least to show that the legislature was compassionate and understanding that with your illnesses that we wanted to figure out a way to at least say it's okay for medical purposes. So given the current law right now, it's my understanding there is a bill that was going through public safety. What if we were to look at that current law? Would that, let's say this didn't pass out, but what if we looked at something like the current medical marijuana law and we tried to make at least access for those plants a little bit easier? Would that at least be a more palatable for you?
Let's look at it like this. Okay, first of all, your plant count is off for a real user, a medical user. I don't have enough plants. Okay. And let's say I go and I get some seeds from somewhere, wherever I get them, and I plant 50 seeds. All right, the minute they have roots, I'm in violation, and I don't even know which one of these 50 plants I can use yet. Once they start to grow, I'm in violation because they got roots. So then they grow a little bit more. I'm still risking because I want to see which one of these are going to be female because I want to end up with males and some Hermes and some. When you get seed, you get whatever. I don't even know if I'm going to get the strain I want medicinally. Okay, so we're just going to take seeds to begin with. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna really struggle growing from seed. And remember, I just got my blue card and I've got half my intestines removed. I've had people talk to them like this. They've got half their intestines removed. They just got their blue card. Do you think they can grow from seed? Right. Do you think they can even take, all right, let's say I could get some plants. All right, we say, okay, forget the seed bit. We're going to help you out. Okay. You can have someone, first of all, they've got to have the plant. They have to have a mother plant. And then they take clones, what they call clones. They propagate off that plant. Okay, I'm still going to have to wait how many months now before I can get my medication. But at least I know what strain I've got. Right. I've got the right medicinal strain, which I will only know anecdotally since there's no scientific evidence to support. I mean, you see how difficult your law for medicinal use is? So I'm thinking that if you just legalize, it's going to make it easier for everybody. You, me, everybody. I mean, I've tried to work with you guys are the most compassionate of all legislators, obviously, because you passed the compassionate use law. We've tried to fix it. How many times have I come before this body? Now I've been here how many times, and I'm walking though this time, which is really good. I am walking, and I'm walking in. You're not going to fix probably my medicinal use bill. We can try. Okay. I'll give it a shot.
I think that continues to be a viable alternative. But I think, again, especially
but if you want to remove the black market, do you want to get black market out of this? Legalize.
Thank you,
will
Terry.
Screw them up.
Okay. Thank you, Terry. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none. Thank you. I was actually hoping to get done by 4:20, but it didn't. Next up, we have Catherine Atchley in support, Alan K. Alexander in support, Delizia Cambra in support. I have a email address as a testifier, dostler007@hawaii.rr.com. Sound familiar? In support. F. Morgan in support. Hard Knocks Inc. DBA Smokies in support. James. Come on up.
Just make it quick and short. I just want to, my name is Russell Smith, just to say thank you that I'm here. And I support the bill. I'm just on the front lines. I own
Just to pull the plant thing.
I own a smoke shop here in Hawaii. I have 3 of them. One on the North Shore, one in Waikiki, and a new one opening up on the University. And yeah, my train of thought. I'm just saying that we're missing out on sales, big time. I get asked with every single pipe sale. I get asked, can I get some bud with that? You know, just constantly. So I just want to say that, you know, if you legalize, we can take the money out of the criminals' hands and we put it in our in our taxpayers' pockets. That's all I really want to say.
All right, thank you very much. Next up, we have James Traynor in support, Jeff Crawford in support, Jeff Mann in support, Joan Conroe in support, Joshua Sweet in opposition, Linda Pizzatola in support, Marjorie Kaho'okele in support. I'm sorry, in opposition, Nancy Alec in support. That's what it says. Old Dirty Prescott in support, Reverend Dennis Shields in support, Robert McDonald in support, Sister Roz in support, Tanner Lewis in support, Victor Rivera in support, Kristen Mallory in support, Thomas S. Stutz in support, Jesse Bain Bose Hart in support, Matthew Fowler comments, T.S. Tuatele Leapanga in opposition, Aaron Tozier in opposition. Okay, members, any questions for, I'm sorry, Mr. Smith, was it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, Representative Thielen.
Just a real quick one. So, Mr. Smith, you're a small business, and so this is the kind of thing that would help small business people in Hawaii, and then you all...
Correct. Actually, I just paid about $85,000 in tax.
Okay. And the criminal element doesn't volunteer
pay.
to step up and do that?
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I add something real quick? So in Waikiki, I have, like I said, we have about a little over 100 sales a day with different, and with these salespeople ask, and we got to push them away each time. And when we push them away, it's like we have, drug dealers standing a block down and a block up, and we have to fight. And I've literally fought these guys. Get out of here! You can't be doing this. This is illegal, and leave my customers alone. Well, some of the customers, they go out there and they find these drug dealers, and they're just looking for just a little bit of stress relief. Next thing you know, the drug dealer switches it, gives them some fake stuff, or steals their wallet, or steals their phone, or does whatever. And then this person, they go home, and the only memory they have is, I got robbed in Hawaii.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Next up, we have Alexander Jones in support, Alva T. Strickland in support, Amber in support, Anastasia Lanham in support, Andrew Henderson in support, Annie Hollis in support, Anthony Padilla in support, Brenda Upchurch in support, Brent Neal in support, Brittany Neal in support, Bronson Demias in support, Candy Bender in support, Carlos J. Trahan in support, Carly Scott in support, Charles Rexsteiner in support, Chris Vinlewin in support, Colton Sear in support, Dennis DeJoy in support, Elizabeth Seaman in support, Ellen Jacobs in support, Jasmine with comments, Jason Kamalu Gruppen in support, Jason L. in support, Jasper Moore in support, Jeremy Jones in support, John Maheu in support, Kaya Taguchi in support. Okay, moving on. Kahuna Consulting with comments. Kanaka Maole in support. Karen Oye Selby in support. Kekoa Olmos in support. Come on up. I'm sorry. Kekoa? Kekoa. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for hearing us, representatives. So, I'm not going to talk stats or anything like that. I'm going to talk more about an emotional level here and talk reason. So what my feelings on this issue is that this plant is benign, and laws are meant to protect. It's to protect from this. The danger comes from the people trying to make financial gain off of this plant because it is desired, and people desire things of all types. They desire anything that makes their lives easier and more pleasurable things. And so, with that being said, making it legal is giving people the freedom and it is allowing them to satisfy these desires without being afraid of prosecution. I think that there are in life that need to be protected against, like the dangers and PCP and the things mentioned earlier. And weed cannot be pigeonholed with these drugs because it's not the same. It simply is not the same. The construct, the chemicals used, there is no chemical used. That's the point, is that ice and all these things are manufactured from harsh chemicals mixed together in a lab that create damages to the brain. There's been MRI scans to brains of before and after ice users who have literally black spots on their brain from damage over years of abuse. But with marijuana, there's been people walking again. There's been people who I know personally who are suffering, are now feeling less ill, have bigger appetites, and they can help themselves and take care of themselves. And it matters a lot to me. And it's not about the money, it's about, that's all.
Thanks very much. I'll catch your side in support. Keahi Olalo in support. Kevin Yolkin. Lalita J. Smith in support. Miley Padilla in support. Makana K. Aloha Vertido in support. Mark Lefkowitz in support. Mark Vickers in opposition. Michael Murphy II in support. Mitch Johnson in opposition. Johnson in support. Nettie McKnight in support. Neil Kamal in support. Nomi Carmona in support. Patrick Brown. I sure did. Come on up. Afternoon.
Aloha. My name is Nomi Carmona. I am the president of a nonprofit called Babes Against Bio. Recently taken a position on this. We fit marijuana here. Obviously, we stand to profit doing that here, and I do think the tourists should be allowed, of course, warnings. But absolutely, that would bring a lot of industry here. I'm representing over 1,800 members. Only because if we're to legalize marijuana, then that will certainly ease the passageway for industrial hemp, which is a material that we need from the soil. And we have looking to pass right now for industrial hemp. I mean, of course, we support its social and recreational private use as long as it's response to adults who are not interested and children. We need to legalize marijuana in order to have industrial hemp, because right now anything 0.01 is not allowed. And hemp is 1,000 different things, and textiles. So we would definitely want to bring that back in. We need the jobs, we need the business. There are a lot of people that I can think of off the top of my head who would be thrilled to dedicate their lives to studying the cultivation of marijuana, who otherwise may not be involved in taking care of the land or getting involved in those things. Of course, I'm not advocating for monoculture of any type. That needs to be rotated. It's excellent, especially with the level of plantation damage and chemical of the land. It would be very wise of us, and I think, quite frankly, it would be foolish not to advance. I want to pull up, just before I go, he said, oh, actually, I want to pull up this. Senator Patrick Leahy, who's the chairman, who's the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, said that one option they're considering in the beginning of this year is to amend the Federal Controlled Substances Act to allow possession of up to 1 ounce, at least in jurisdictions where it's legal under state law. So in addition, you know, the president has come out and said we have bigger fish to fry, personal recreational users of marijuana. This opportunity to use that funding for things that are going to increase the sustainability of Hawaii, counseling to help rehabilitate our meth-addicted population. We need to decrease the 85% of food that we're bringing in.
Can you
Absolutely. My last sentence is that if we were to bring in recreational cannabis, and if we were to bring in industrial hemp and organic farming, get the GMOs out of Hawaii, and bring in this healing plant that can withdraw the toxins from the soil, that's a paradise people will want to come to again and again.
Thanks very much. Thanks for waiting so long. Next up, we have Pat in support, Reverend Nancy Waite Harris in support, Robert Bacher in support, Robert Rhea in support, Robert Stratton in support, Scott Young in support, Sean A. James Levy in support.
Good afternoon, Chair Rose, Vice Chair Har, Rep. Thielen. Aloha. I was just in Washington last fall, attending school in Olympia, Washington, the capital. Actually voted on the initiative 502. Had the chance to vote on it up there, and I wanted to act as a messenger of sorts of some ideas to you for amendment. Firstly, they put out fact sheets, the info fact sheet. It's almost like a textbook. I was really so the Office of Fiscal Management put out this fact sheet for voters about the revenue implications, all the implications. They said total revenue generated to the state could be as high as $1.9 billion over 5 years. And they broke this down. I'd be happy to submit this to the committee afterwards. They broke this down over the 248 million, fiscal year 434 million, and on there just around that number, $450 million per year in revenue. And they look at all the expenditures where this is all going, and they broke that down too as part of the initiative. I'd be happy to submit this after for you to take a look at. But basically, there's funds to behavioral health services, behavioral health and recovery for prevention, around $60 million every year towards that, education and outreach. So this is all written into their initiative, their public initiative. I think you have a harder task, being that Hawaii doesn't have, we can't petition to have this put on the ballot, and I think you have a harder task being faced to vote on yourself, so you may want to put it on the ballot for voters to decide afterwards. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thanks for waiting so long. Let's go ahead and see if members have any questions for our last three testifiers, Kekoa Olmus, Nomi Carmona, or Sean A. James Levy. Questions? Okay, seeing none. Moving on. Next up we have Sonny in support. Next we have Staff Sergeant John H. Johnson III in support. Stuart Kunioka in opposition. Susan Douglas in support. Tiffany in support. Wilma Flores Abusan in opposition. Zachary Caleb Callaghan in support. Angela Breen in support. Mike Page in support. Ray Laney Viernes in Wheeling in support. Jim Hochberg, been waiting patiently for hours.
I'm half Irish, it's easy. Vice Chair and Rep. Thielen. My name, I've been practicing law in Honolulu since 1984. Became the president of Hawaii Family Advocates, and I'm here testifying in that capacity. I was interested in this bill philosophically as well as a lawyer, and I deal on both counts. As a lawyer, definition of marijuana accessory, and then I read that if a person isn't 21 years old, they can't be in possession of or use or anything. Actually, if you work through that language, that means somebody under 21 can't have any dirt, water hose, fertilizer, shovels, or gardening shears, because those all qualify under your very broad definition. So you might want to look at that. To the bill, because in my understanding, and I'm not a scientist, I'm a lawyer, in order for it to be a good idea to legalize marijuana, you need to be convinced that it's actually going to be a good thing. Not that it's ultimately going to result in a good thing. We elect you guys, and then we trust you to exercise your capabilities to make things good in Hawaii. And the beginning of the bill, the legislature finds that in the interest of the efficient use of law enforcement resources, increasing respect for laws, and enhancing revenue for public purposes, the use of marijuana should be legal, blah, blah, blah. Under that argument, why do we have laws against pornography? Tax it. Why do we have laws against prostitution? Philosophically, when I looked at that, I thought, wow, that we put in you guys, if this is the way you're going to approach your obligations to us. So I was looking at why the federal government takes such a different position on marijuana. Being classified as a offense under the Controlled Substances Act, it is classified that way based on 3 criteria: that the drug has a high potential for abuse, not addiction, abuse. The drug has no currently accepted medical use in treatment in the United States, and I understand the state of Hawaii disagrees with that, but this is why it's Schedule 1. And thirdly, there's a lack of use for the drug under medical supervision. So, assuming that third one is true, under medical supervision, there's a lack of accepted safety for use. There must be a lack of accepted safety for use outside of medical supervision as well. So, I'm asking the question, is legalizing marijuana a good? I don't know. I don't think so. And then the illegal disappearing, well, I look at it this way. If it's illegal right now, and it's still going to be illegal for people under 21, why won't the people that are illegally distributing it now just continue to illegally distribute it?
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you waiting. Next up, we have some guy named Pete. Welcome. Sorry. Good
afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, Representative McDermott, and Mom. I guess I don't really need to say what I've written because that's all been covered pretty well. I think the one thing that just kind of keeps getting me over and over with the people the law enforcement type of thing, the people that are against all this, is it's kind of like acting like it's not a problem as long as it stays in the same category in the same way that we've been dealing with this for years. But in reality, as it's come out, we have more people using than in countries where it's legal. So basically what we're doing is we're continuing as we're continuing. We expect a different result. But how are we going to get a different result when we're doing the same thing that we've been doing for years, and 90% of the kids are getting it? I know the president and I enjoyed it in high school at the same time. The latest Time magazine here, $1.4 billion is what the Mexican drug cartel is going to lose from Washington and Colorado going legal. This is, at least I think it's a fairly authoritative piece. 1.4 billion in money that was going to the drug cartels. I doubt it was 1.4 billion, and yet Washington State and Colorado, by one act, removed that much money from the drug cartels. I think that's awesome. That means our state 100 million too. I also read in the paper through the bill that the Clark County district attorney threw out 229 cases that he had on the books for people that were just for possession. Now, that's an awful lot of court recess of time, 229 cases to be heard, and they've got to do something. you know, I came in and I have so much that I know I only have a few minutes. I really came in from Vice Chair, as you said, you feel that you really want to help the medical patients. I've been a medical patient for years, and just so you know, the heroin and those bad drugs and all that, there's more people that die every year from prescription drugs than from illegal drugs. So, you know, everything needs to be looked at in the reality that we live in. And that's why I appeal to you. This picture that's in my thing is to try to show you how I'm up with all her pills and how, as a medical patient by me, and according to the state here, and as you can see, they're not even 12 inches tall. They're not going to produce much medicine. But without having lights and interior grow to get your plants larger, it takes more than 12 hours of sunlight, which we don't need. Well, you need, again, we want to help in, because I wanted to see a dispensary system. System, while maybe not perfect, can work. Keep a limit of 99 plants, mainly because I would like to see this be something that many Hawaiians can get involved in. I don't want to see big tobacco come to the state and take over all the GMO land. I'd rather see lots of individuals having opportunities to gainfully be employed. Representative McDermott, and there was a publication from '93 about the thing. It says, in coincidence, ice began to appear as a problem in Honolulu around 1987, the year Operation Green Harvest succeeded in doubling its take of the previous year of marijuana. Extensive interviews were conducted with 150 ice users between 92 and 95. Time and smoking ice. The response was the PACA was no. I'd like to see the dispensary for the medical patients. I think that's, just like she was saying, it's a very hard thing to construct. And me as a patient, I'd love to help that woman, but if I go give her some seeds or some plants, I'm in trouble with the law. All of a sudden, I'm illegal. So
I apologize. I know your mother's on the committee too, but
I'm out.
Yeah,
I didn't hear my time up.
No, I think we gave you more than we were supposed to.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That is all the. Wait a minute. Mr. Hochberg.
By the way, I'm suspicious of that shirt fabric. Your mom gave me one of those years ago. So what you brought up, and
Owl the limit.
yeah, and Mrs. Sammy Hagar. So the Green Harvest thing, that's what, you know, I go makes my point. And I grew up in Pennsylvania. They have state stores. Okay, to buy whiskey, you have to go into a state store. Can't buy it in Safeway around here. Very controlled. So in high school, or kids in our age, the only way you get it is steal it from mom and dad's liquor cabinet, because you can't. And they're state employees, so the ID was really strict. So you beer. If you knew someone 21, they'd get bootleggers. I mean, it disappeared because it's controlled. There's quality control, there's pricing, you know, concerned about the quality. You prefer, I think that's the term, yeah, the good stuff. But you could buy different, so you could go in and say, I'd like a milder one. So I think it would all, my guess is it would all disappear from the street. My guess. And so what I come back to is that vacuum again. And the ice that went off the street, the pot was no longer available, so the kids do, but get ice and it's cheap, and the dealers don't care. My concern is that vacuum, I want kids not to use it, okay? If they're 18, they're older, they're going to do what they're going to do. But how do we prevent, and maybe you have some insight, a vacuum from taking place. If it all is legalized and you start selling it retail, if you were in that line of work, you're not going to sell it cheap on the corner. You're going to get the full retail value certified. What causes what?
Well, you know, I think it's kind of it's 22 that you're putting people in on this thing, because, and you're saying if you take it away, dealers, then the dealers are going to, but I think what you're missing in the whole overall context is, as people have spoken, Hawaii culturally has had marijuana for years. I mean, I grew up in the 70s, not the 60s, and I'll tell you right now, I've been to Amsterdam many times, and we had better weed here than is grown anywhere in the world right now. I mean, all this talk about this big worry, you know, the stuff that's coming out now, they get it tested for in the dispensaries. Different types available. Sativa's a little bit lighter because more heavy, higher THC content for evening pain quantities. But when I read about hundreds of people dying from prescription drugs and people think they're okay, the uncle who's doing ice because he doesn't have the pocket, how the kids follow suit in something like that. For everything would solve everything? No. But you know, compassionate, and you started a program. Even though it's still against federal law, you've helped patients. I'm trying to a little more, and maybe this bill that decriminal will also help cut down on judicial and the other type of things. One other quick point, that bag that they were showing, smoked that whole thing, and then 10 more bags, all at one time. I mean, I don't think I could do it. They're still not going to die. Now, you buy a case of vodka and try to drink that, you won't even get through half of it before you'll be dead. So, and then what you folks have done about cigarettes, I see a lot less kids smoking these days. It's $10 a pack now, and the quit line. So many people go to that because you guys made great decisions. You said, okay, we can't completely get rid of cigarettes. Well, let's make them be more expensive. Let's tax them. Let's take some of that money and put it into the tobacco quit line. You don't need to be, you can be rich, you can be poor, you can get free patches. You get someone on the line saying, yeah, get off of that. And I'm out in Waimea on Kauai, out in the, you know, where all the locals live. And man, before all that happened, I'd see kids from the high school coming over in boatloads buying packs. Not anymore, not at $10 a pack. So, you know, it's about being sensible. You know, it's not about, I mean, you know, it's compassion, and it's being sensible. It's putting resources where they should go. I mean, making criminals, like a lot of people have come up and they said, you've made me a criminal, and everything else in my life, I'm a non-criminal. And so, and then how does that fit with kids? How are kids supposed to respect laws when, especially because this is all common knowledge out there about Pakalolo?
Yeah, I'd like you to understand that my position is not some slick, contrived political position. It's as dad with four big boys in their 20s, and the reality of it is, you know, yeah, they're not criminals either, and they don't all do it, but we do have a
well, my boys have smoked. They're all in their 20s. One's a doctor, and the other's gainfully employed and taking care of everything on his own.
So the reality is, you know, we're dealing with we can talk, but the reality is it is what it is. So if legal where you're 16 and your dad said, well, it's your birthday, I'm going to get you a beer. Okay, so Dad, you can have a beer, sit here and watch the ball game with me. That's fine. Okay. I'm sorry.
Is there a question? Okay. Representative Barr.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Thielen, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your passion. Wait, no, I have a question for you. Okay.
Trying to help you guys. Get out of
Come
here.
all the way to Hawaii. We're going to grill you.
So you talked about, you know, we talked about the 1 ounce bag. And you said, okay, if somebody smokes that entire thing, they're still not going to die.
Right.
But would you agree that that person would be in somewhat of a mind-altered state if they were to smoke that entire 1 ounce?
Well, I didn't test the quality, so
well, regardless.
No, but I understand. I kind of understand what you're trying to say.
The reason I'm going down this line is for the victim of a drunk driving crash.
Oh,
Okay,
that's
so when
horrible.
people sit here and tell me that, oh, it's like alcohol, it's not a big deal, and alcohol is legal. The fact of the matter is, when anything is a mind-altering substance, it can be abused, and as a result. That's what I'm concerned with, is the social ills. Again, let's be clear. When it comes to the medical issues, I've always been compassionate. Ms. Heedy knows that. Many constituents know that. I've always taken that position. But when we're talking about the social ills. So let me ask you this question, and I'm deviating, if I may, for a moment, Chair.
Sure.
Do you support gambling, legalizing gambling in the state of Hawaii?
Keep it as it is, and I can see reasons to make it legal.
Well, your mother has been very open in opposition to it. Talk about taxing it, economic development, it'll create jobs, but the biggest concern, the overriding concern from the legislature has been the social ills that would come, and that the social consequences far outweigh any economic benefits. And I think that's kind of the concern that I have. So I don't want people to misunderstand me. It's just that that's my biggest concern, that the bill has detrimental social impacts because of the fact everyone keeps saying, oh, but once you legalize it to the age of 21, only 21 and over, anyone.
I don't think that's realistic.
And that's not realistic, because even kids today. And so when Representative McDermott keeps realistic, even if we do legalize it. And
well,
so
I think I answered in that respect. So I'm with you, Vice Chair, on this deal, especially with the issue of drunk driving. Is that we're not doing this in a vacuum. In other words, we're not looking at, do we legalize it or not legalize it? We're de facto legalized when we have 90% of the kids in high school trying it. I think that whole thing with Reagan's wife and the DARE program only made more kids. You don't dare a kid. Daring is, I dare you to jump off the cliff. You don't take any drugs.
But Mr. Thielen, applying that logic again, gambling,
Right.
why don't we just legalize it then? Or why don't we just make some money off of it? The logic, and with all due respect, to me, it seems somewhat disconcerting right now. And that's why, again, I've always supported medical marijuana. But at the end of the day, it's still against federal law. And so when you folks are all coming to us, I don't know why you guys are not lobbying your congressional men and women, because that's who really needs to change the law. That once the feds change the law, this is a moot point.
Well, the thing is, and just like prohibition, it was by state. This is what's happening with medical marijuana. Actually, my wife, I came over and was in support of, which was for industrial hemp. The following year, the medical marijuana bill came through. I did not come over and testify. My mom did not present forward on it. But the representatives from the previous year had gotten past that, oh, pot, who's going to get the munchies? It got beyond that, because we were starting to talk about it in a real fashion. That the industrial is one type, the medical is another. And I'm not trying to go on, but I understand what you're trying to get at there. But the real crux of the whole thing is, I would much rather be on the road with a few people that have had a joint than a person that's had alcohol. Personally, I think that, not that I want to be on the road with either of them. And I don't drive at night, mainly because doctors have said, 35, 40% of the people are, so I stay home, but I understand. But the thing is, you can't, you can't.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so
Thank you,
much.
Mr. Thielen. Thank you very much.
That was all the written testimony we had as of about noon. So if there's anyone else who'd like to testify, please come. Okay, hang on. We got four. I got 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, just gentlemen right here. Let's start here, and then we'll go to Superman.
You give a written testimony in the next 24 hours.
Okay, great.
Representative Rhodes and Judiciary Committee, I am opposed to
Could you please identify yourself, sir?
What is that?
Could you please identify yourself?
I will in 1 second. To House Bill 699. My name is Luis Souza. I'm a retired major with the Honolulu Police Department of 41 years of service. 20 of those years were with the Criminal Investigation Division. And of those 20 years, I was assigned 10 years with the Homicide Detail. Now, just in the Homicide Detail, about every murder that I went to had Budweiser beer. Now, you guys want to outlaw Budweiser beer? No. Okay, anyway, let me continue. The other details that I was assigned to, the other 21 years, was assigned to the legislative liaison that I was here for 8 years representing the police department. The other years I was with traffic enforcement, and I saw a lot of traffic fatalities involving drugs as well as alcohol. And of course, the patrol division, where I saw a lot of drugs arrests being made because of other criminal activity. I strongly oppose this bill to the legislature. To legalize marijuana. The federal government opposes this legislation because their studies have shown that this particular drug, the brain, there hasn't been any other legislation to show that it didn't attack the brain. And that's why this bill will not benefit, okay, especially the young. Because you know what? You're still going to have black people. You're going to have the black market in there. People are going to be making money regardless of what you do or how many laws you pass. I'll submit my, but I'd like to say this. I believe that the legislature has far more important items to address. And I'll give you one, for instance. The retirement system. The legislature took over this 3-year or 9-year process. They took over $900 million from back. That was for what they call shortfall. Well, I could go on and on with all the different things that you guys are confronted with, but I'm not going to do that. The legislature kept raising taxes and kept favoring the big guys and letting the middle class and the lower class suffer. I could give you a lot of other reasons about that. I'll just finish with this.
Okay, thank you.
Again, I strictly oppose this bill for it sends a wrong message to our community. I belong to a senior baseball league here in the state. And I could go and get all of these signatures from all of these elderly people. You don't see elderly people in here. You see all the young kids in here. Okay? They don't know what it is to go through hardships. So anyway,
I've been cutting everybody else off. So
okay, you can cut them off, but I'm going to finish what I have to say. I never spend 3 or 4 hours over here for you not to hear it.
Everybody else has been sitting here a long time too. So if you could please wrap up.
And that's why I oppose this bill. Okay. And I'll bring in signatures if you want. And I'll bring in thousands of signatures if you want.
It's up to you. Thank you very much. We'll take any disrespect to the man in the Super Bowl Superman T-shirt. You're next, please. I'm sorry about that, I guess.
It's okay. My name is D'Angelo McIntyre, and I'm young. But I wanted to address some things, and I wrote them down. For one person had mentioned that this was a biblical-based society, and I think that's true. We are a nation primarily of Christians. And it's funny because the Bible says in Genesis chapter 1, verse 29, that God looked upon all seed-bearing plants and said that it was good. And in 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 4, it says, every creature of God is good and nothing is to be refused. Actually, for everything created by God is good, and nothing is to be rejected if it is received with gratitude. The Bible goes on to mention plants of this nature as being the healings of the nation. Now, I don't understand how God would make one plant, the American government, not any other government, just What's the United States? There's the reason that it's illegal in the first place. I am an African American. I found out the true reason why marijuana is illegal. And it is nothing but pure racism. One of the propaganda tools, I saw this, and one of the propaganda tools used to make marijuana illegal was that black men would get high and rape white women. Okay? This in the fields. They did not want us having fun, and they wanted to take it away from us at any level that they could. Last thing, sorry, I wanted to bring up, besides that, bear with me for a second, is, ma'am, I'm so sorry that you were the victim of a drunk driving accident. My boyfriend, he totaled my truck drunk, and I wasn't in the truck with him that can cause. It was my first vehicle. I had a black. But what I'm getting at is, I've driven high before. And I have not hit anybody. If anything, I take 2 hits when I'm stuck in traffic so that I have more aloha.
There's someone in the back over here.
Mahalo for the opportunity to testify. I'm Carly Williams, and I'm also I am more taking an environmental approach. I'm not just looking at this bill as it is. I'm looking at the bigger picture and the future and progress that this bill can bring. I truly think it could revolutionize this country and even the planet by use and production of all. I just wanted to list some facts. Hemp plastics are lighter than steel, but could withstand 10 times the impact in a car. It makes ethanol 4 times warmer and 7 times more durable and flame retardant than cotton for clothes. 30% cellulose, and that's what you use to make paper. The rest with toxic chemicals. 85. It's good for paper. One is more than 4 to 10 acres of over 20, and so it's much more environmentally responsible because it only takes 4 months for a hemp plant to mature. So it is also a really smart building material with a negative carbon footprint. And the reason it was, another reason that it was illegalized in the first place was because of false journalism and corporate interests in timber. To make paper and stuff like that. And let's see. Another awesome benefit is that it releases cannabinoids, which are fundamental to neurological and immune system processes within our body. There's more research going on that shows that these cannabinoids, man, are healing people. I'll wrap it up with the fact that my friend is also my friend's friend back there, who is diagnosed with cancer, and he wanted me to speak about him today because he said that he was misdiagnosed when he was younger, and he actually started smoking bud since he was 8th grade, but the doctors in DC have told him that if not for the bud, his rare cancer in his lungs would have spread to his brain. So with that being said, I also wanted to leave you guys with a note that users have become justices, Olympic gold medalist, and Bill Gates.
Thanks very much. I think there was a gentleman in the back. You want to come on up? Come on up. Sorry, Saiki. I may have. I don't know.
Thank you, Chair
Please identify
Rose,
yourself.
Vice Chair Har, and the representatives. I'm
sorry, could you just give us your name?
I'm Pittsburgh with Kahuna Consulting.
Okay, great.
Yeah. I've been frequenting Amsterdam for the past 15 years or so and doing consulting over there and watching how the laws and everything have changed over the years. So I just want to touch on a few things that people have said throughout the day and stuff. They weren't closing coffee shops in Amsterdam due to violence or anything. They were closing them because over the past 15 years, they've changed the laws in Amsterdam for the better, and it's all worked, 30 grams at a time. Then it went to 25. to 20, 18, 15, and then on down, it's down to 5 grams at a setting, which that's something that we should play with as well. With legalizing that, their youth and their older people have not used marijuana, a lower percentage, and the gap between that and using ice and everything else, well, everybody knows it's called education. Okay, they know those are bad drugs. They don't go there. Marijuana is legal. It's allowed to be used, and their usage has gone down in that. The reason for the closing of the shops, not because of violence, is because, once again, they're changing the laws, and they were too close to schools. That's the only reason they closed, which are the internet, of course. You will always, from a trip, I've been doing consulting there for about 8 years now. They're trying to keep the Germans and the French people and the other border peoples out. So they're closing down all the coffee shops in all of Netherlands, except for in the city of Amsterdam and Rotterdam, and a couple more cities to be decided. So that way the Germans have to drive through the country, come in there, they put their, and that's the reason of the closing of coffee shops outside of the city, and within the city they were closing because of not violent reasons, because they were too close to schools. Okay? Organic. I'm friends with the person that did aeroponics. He swears by soil. We have to do soil, everything else. You cannot OD on marijuana. You can smoke as much as you want. You can try. You cannot. However, you can OD on different. On the dabs, what they're called oils and accenture stuff, they do cure lung cancer. They slow the growth of other cancers and prevent other cancers and stuff. Maui is for the demographics to execute the perfect plan for cannabis. Decriminalize it. We cannot pull off a mass plan like that.
Okay.
We need paperwork.
All right, great.
Yes.
Thanks very much.
That's it. If you have any other, please share to forward those to you.
I think I saw another hand.
Wanted to ask a question, having
Let
sat through.
me finish up with the testifiers first. Back there in the back, would you like to come up? Afternoon.
Hi, good evening, Chairman. Members, I'm Dr. Dave Barton. I have several roles in Hawaii. One is as Chief Medical Officer of an organization called Malama First, which is a nonprofit Native Hawaiian organization for the advancement of Native Hawaiians in their health care. One of my chief concerns is the criminalization of Native Hawaiians. In Hawaii, through generations of what is their cultural use for a variety of sufferings and their alternative medicine ways of dealing with common ailments. I don't think this is very much of a, we're really not here program. I think the medical program needs to be improved dramatically, to be access for those that can't grow, like cancer patients and such, but this is not the setting for medical discussion about common purchasing and common use. Now, I should throw in the caveat that I would imagine that anybody who uses medicinal or not, it's hard to judge what is medicinal. 70-year-olds have cannabis, but hurt. 60-year-olds, 50-year-olds, 40-year-olds. When does it medicine? In my experience, people over the age of start using it, if they're continuing to use it, generally are using that they have. And that's pretty much all I wanted to say, that I do support the medical program. I'm really up in the air about this, and the DEA will ever allow for this to become a non-conductor regulated and dictated by the federal government. In the Civil War, that's the end. So, that's the reality. We're talking about reality here. People can get, very, categories in their sides about it, but the bottom line is we're talking about reality and real people. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Anyone else wish to come up? Arvid, Mr. Youngquist. Mr. Young, yes, Mr. Youngquist. Sorry.
You were pointing over.
Yeah, that was a...
Vice Chair, members
of the committee. My name is Arvid Youngquist. I have not been able to submit a written testimony because I did not realize anybody was having a hearing today. But this is one bill that I would like to testify. I support House Bill 699 with you. And it was introduced by your leadership and quite a number of co-sponsors. It deserves a hearing. And in terms of measures that may help promote quality control of the product, keeping the population lower, I think that this measure merits your favorable consideration. Of you who are to be on base when Emperor Haile Selassie came through. As you know, he's considered a Jesus-like character. Hungarians smoked marijuana in Sparta. On the military base, the U.S. military, the whole room, which was enough to house about a dozen soldiers, was full of marijuana smoke and revival and such. Really bothered to come around to check us out. He was able to move in with somebody who was planning to become a minister when he gets back to return to Texas. And I came across Caucasians, which is what you find mostly in Caucasians. And they were saying they're supporting a candidate who was running on a single to reduce the penalty use in possession of marijuana.
Could you please start to wrap up?
Sure. The candidate's name was Darrell Blakeway. He was a one-on-one race, so he didn't make it. He earned a lot of respect. He later on went to Washington, D.C. There are many bills that you folks have introduced which may be considered unconstitutional, but it should be heard. It may be challenged.
Okay.
It should be appealed, and you win at the higher courts, perhaps. Prohibition.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else wish to testify? Come on down. Afternoon.
Jeremy Thorne, and I just wanted to say that whether we legalize a hole in the black market I mean, if you can go to the store and buy it, I think that's way better. We owe money to people, the retirees. Our state owes money of what's already a situation. That's all I want to say.
Very much. Anyone else? Mr. Hochberg, I'm not going to let everybody testify twice, but if somebody wants to ask
I got a question for Jim.
Okay, so if there's no one else who wants to testify, I'll open up for questions for the people, the last batch of people. If you want to bring Mr. Hochberg back up.
Jim, I got a question for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. What's on your mind?
That's a really good question. I just wondered if this bill is a committee that is concerned with tourism. Because golden egg is tourism, and this may have a very negative effect on the family nature, friendly nature of tourism. We need to think about that, I think.
No, it only had a Judiciary Committee and Finance.
So just a follow-up. So what you're talking about, have we thought through how it will affect our brand?
Exactly.
The same way with gambling.
Okay, members, any other questions? I'm not bringing people up twice. If there's somebody that's, you haven't been up, come on up.
Or good evening. Aloha, Chair Rhodes, Vice Chair Har, and members of the committee. The other issue we have not discussed at all is the trade balance with foreign nations. States have made marijuana legal. All the states were to stop doing it. It would do a great deal to reshape our balance of trade. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Members, any questions? As I mentioned before, we will be doing decision-making this coming Thursday at 2 p.m. in this room here. That's when we'll decide what to do with the committee here.
Chair, before we receive a comment,
Sure.
I thought this was very entertaining, and it was in the midweek of January 23rd, 2013, and I was very entertained by it. And I'm hoping, Capital TV will be able to do a close-up on this. Particularly, it's a cartoon from Roy Chang, and you've got a Lolo, a can of soda, and what appears to be a big Slurpee or something. And there's waiting outside. It says legislative hearing in process. Please wait outside until Kakalolo is saying to the soda and to the Slurpee, what? Dudes, wait. I'm supposed to be good and you're being considered as bad? And so I just think this was a thing because we're dealing with some of these issues right now. So thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We are adjourned. Mahalo for being here.
Thank you all for coming.